Hello everyone. I'm glad to see you on my channel. The story I'm going to tell you today is pure. It is true that all the bad things that happen in life happen for a reason. It is said that we can appreciate the good things, the things when they happen to us. I hope you enjoy this story. I wish you a pleasant viewing experience.
The atmosphere in the courtroom was heated to the max. The crowd, hungry for justice, settled under the windows, frantically demanded to punish the defendant. It is understandable, because the case was egregious and high profile. The murder of the businessman David Patrick Johnson stirred up not only the city, but the entire region. The son killed his own father. What can you say? The motive for the murder was banal and old as the world: money, inheritance, in general the most base passions. All the media of the region were abuzz about this news. Newspapers were full of headlines. Millionaire son went for murder. Son kills his father, or the story of how money drives you crazy, and so on. The news appeared in the yellow press as well as in the serious publications of Boston. The common people were outraged. These rich people have gone completely crazy, they said, in stores, hospitals, public transportation. They think that because they have money, they can do anything. And the most desperate came to the courtroom and poured out their righteous anger. Murder for life. Let the murderer rot in prison, they chanted. Jessica, the defendant's stepmother, had a confused look. How can this be? Her eyes said as she married Johnson. She already had a son, Michael, who also attended the trial. He was one of the crowd of gawkers, while Jason, the rich man's native son, sat in the dock. Now that was ridiculous. Jason glanced furtively at his half-brother. Their gazes met for a second, and Jason saw the contempt in Michael's eyes. He turned away quickly, and the accused's expression returned to one of detachment. The look in Jason's eyes made it clear that he was resigned to his fate. He knew that his chances of acquittal were minimal, or, more accurately, non-existent. The people who disliked the children of the rich had long ago given Jason a verdict, and all he could do was wait. And what is there to wait for when the defendant's guilt is undeniable? There was concrete evidence against him. On August 13, 1999, Jason Patrick Johnson was apprehended in his father's office with a bronze candlestick in his hands, the prosecutor said in a monotone. At the time of discovery, David Patrick Johnson was already dead. According to witnesses, the defendant was covered in blood. Jason covered his eyes. It was clear as day to those present, but it wasn't to him. The boy had a lot of questions. For example, who had called the police? A mystery no one would ever solve, because no one would want to. I mean, here he is, ready. Not even a suspect anymore, but an accused, a defendant. So why solve anything? The lawyer took the floor. Alas, a public defender. Stepmother didn't have a dime for a good lawyer. Well, it was understandable. Jason Patrick Johnson, will you tell the court what happened? He asked the defendant, despite his pessimistic attitude. The son of the murdered businessman did not think of giving up in the hope of getting the necessary testimony. Jason had been hinted more than once that he was in a bad way. But as his father liked to say, as long as we are alive, there is always hope. And the defendant began his story. On the evening of August 13th, I entered my father's office. What was the purpose of your visit? Inquired defense counsel. I wanted to talk about the division of the spheres of business, Jason replied. Suddenly he realized with horror that the provocative questions were about to begin. The division of business. You could say that's a motive, but a word is not a sparrow. Well, there's my father lying there covered in blood. Yes, he died in my arms, and I took the candlestick by accident, but I didn't kill him. Why would I kill my father, who was everything to me? For inheritance. I would have gotten my share anyway. You would have, Michael replied. Good point, brother. Jason made what he thought were reasonable arguments, but in vain. Everything pointed to the fact that he was the killer. In the name of the Russian Federation, Jason Patrick Johnson, born in 1965, is sentenced to 20 years in prison. A gloating murmur ran through the room, and the defendant thought detachedly, well, that's it. The jury took into account neither Jason's cooperation with the investigation, nor the presence of a young daughter, whom he raised alone. Jason's wife died in childbirth. I'll be back, he said when he was given the last word. I'll be back. I'm going to get justice. The press didn't even try to hide their smirks. It was too unbelievable. And everyone knew it when the convict was led away. He met Michael's gaze again and noticed the triumphant smile on his face. Why would that be? Or maybe it was just Jason's imagination that Johnson steps and turned away hurriedly, as if he didn't want anything to do with the killer. Tough luck, brother Michael thought, and hurried out of the courthouse. Outside, the press was already waiting for him and his mother. No comment, waved away the newly appointed successor of the business from the representatives of the writing fraternity. Mother and son got into the car and drove away to the apartment, which was now at their complete disposal. 20 years had passed. Young, beautiful, expensively dressed brunette drove home, despite the fact that it was the second half of August. The heat outside was stifling. Jessica, the daughter of a wealthy businessman, drove up to the store to buy water and fruit. Today was her lucky day. Beautiful dark hair, pretty face. The girl noted with displeasure that the only place to park her foreign car was the corner, but there was nothing to do. Jessica turned off the engine and suddenly felt unbearably hot. It was weird. The air conditioning seems to be working, she thought. Why is it so hot? And when the girl smelled the smell of burning, she felt sick. But that was just the beginning. The car, literally cornered, suddenly caught fire and she was trapped. Jessica rushed to get out of the car, but there was no way. The plastic handle, which was already beginning to melt, did not give in, and the girl was almost resigned to the prospect of burning alive. But apparently there is a God in the world. A poorly dressed man appeared out of nowhere, homeless by the looks of it. Without wasting a second, he broke the glass and, risking his life, rescued Jessica from the fiery captivity. "Hurry up," he shouted, pushing the girl aside. The explosion could go off at any second. The car exploded a few seconds after the homeless man, along with Jessica, were a safe distance away. "Thank you so much." From the bottom of my heart, she thanked the homeless man. "After the shock, you're a very brave man." "No, really," he said, embarrassed. "No, really," exclaimed the girl. "After all, except you, no one dared to do such a deed. Tell me, how can I find you in case of emergency?" "In case of what?" hummed the homeless man, repeating Jessica's last words. Well, now she was embarrassed. "It's not a big deal. And I'm a stranger." Pilgrimy grinned. "Settled all this in the Boston train station area, so that's where you can look for me if you need me." She nodded with a smile, noting that her savior was quite young, perhaps even handsome. "And if you dress him up in decent clothes, oh God, I can't believe what I'm thinking," Jessica reminded herself. "I see," she nodded. "Good luck, and thank you." Likewise, the homeless man said, and walked away as if he'd never been there. Then the police, fire department, and tow trucks arrived. Jessica gave a statement, talked to the officers, and then called a cab and went home with a sense of accomplishment. "Why'd you take a cab?" Dad asked. "There's something wrong with the car," Jessica exclaimed, and recounted her misfortunes. "I see," he said dryly, and went into the house. She did not expect her father to be worried, and then offered her hot tea and a cozy warm plaid. In fact, there was no family connection between them. Michael was almost an uncle to Jessica. Why almost? Simple. He was the half-brother of her father, that is, Jason Johnson, who was convicted 20 years ago. Jessica knew that her own father had been sent to prison, from which he never returned. Michael's mother, Jessica Borisovna, had died a long time ago. As far as Jessica knew, she was terminally ill. The girl's foster father was a very unpleasant type. Michael constantly infringed on her and everything he touched. Jessica never received any pocket money from him, and those expenses, without which one way or another could not do without, were calculated literally to the cent. It was horrible. Jessica was so hurt, it was beyond words. If there was one thing he could save money on, it was his niece, his stepdaughter. The car Michael had bought her was a used car. He wouldn't have bought anything at all. But it is not proper for the daughter of a businessman to walk, ride the subway, not according to status. Her business acquaintances would have laughed at her, and the fact that the car is used, it's no big deal. No one would even check it, especially since the car looked quite presentable. Except, despite that, there was a fire. And if it hadn't been for that bum, Michael would have been preparing for her funeral. Jessica imagined for a moment what kind of funeral he would have organized, and he would have saved money. Cheap wreaths, cheap coffin. Naturally, no music, let alone makeup. Jessica shuddered. Ugh, she thought. I can't believe she'd think of such a thing. Thank God I'm still alive. That's just black humor. But seriously, Jessica was very hurt. She'd grown up in a wealthy family, lived in a beautiful 2-story mansion, but she had absolutely no privileges. The girl knew that her peers from wealthy families, if not laughing at her, then discussed her outfits from no longer relevant collections, or the same unfashionable car that had burned so ignominiously in the parking lot. And she understood them perfectly well. And Jessica also studied at the university on a budget. However, she didn't care about that. The scholarship, of course, was ridiculous, but it was still a penny. From time to time, Jessica thought that the reason for such attitude of Papa and Michael to her was that her father was Wesnan. But what was her fault? After all, children are not responsible for their parents. After taking a bath, she went to her room on the 2nd floor, turned on her laptop, intending to watch some romantic comedy. Her cell phone rang. Dad, what did he want? I wondered. Jessica, I've been thinking, Michael said. Anyway, why don't you invite that tramp over for dinner? What? Was the girl taken aback? Michael, what the foster father chuckled. You gotta respect the man. After all, he saved your life. Why would you insult him? The tramp was a man too. Jessica didn't think to object to the last argument. The tramp was indeed a man too. It was just that such an invitation was too atypical for Michael. Even the average citizen didn't consider a homeless man a human being for tea. And even homeless people weren't considered as such. It's not like he got his head screwed on a winter's day in the sun. The next day, Jessica went looking for the stranger. Pilgrim, as the homeless man called himself. It was a pleasure to find the vagrant. Settled in the train station area, Jessica remembered his words, so look for him there. What? Let's start there, she reasoned. Her search led her to a kebab shop in Station Square, where she thought the employees might know the tramp by sight. She decided to approach one of them. Jessica, excuse me, do you know a homeless man? Tall, skinny, but pretty tough. The Caucasian kebab maker's wide, stinging black eyebrows crept upward, and Jessica, realizing that she had said something stupid, hastened to clarify that he was quite young. The kebab maker, smiling with dazzling white teeth, asked, "Why would such a pretty girl need some tramp?" He winked and added, "I'd rather come over tonight. We'll go to my place, bathhouse, sauna, kebab, beer, champagne." Jessica, no, thank you, she politely declined. I really need this particular tramp, on business. The kebab man, what's his name? There was disappointment in the young Jigit's voice. Jessica just sighed. The fact that she had forgotten to ask for a name was a big omission, though how was she to know that a vagrant might be needed by her father? Jessica, I don't know. The kebab man, confused, well, maybe there's a picture. Jessica shook her head. The kebab man, strange thing, no name, no photo. How do you look for them then? There are as many as slaughtered around here, but I can help. He smiled meaningfully. Jessica, overjoyed, really. The kebab man, sure, just one kiss and I'll help you. Offended, Jessica walked away. It took 2 more days to find her. She was helped by an observant boy of about 11, also a vagrant. The boy asked in a businesslike manner, tall, stout, could that be Max Pilgrim? Jessica rejoiced, realizing she was on the right track. Jessica, that sounds like him. Do you know where to find him? The boy mouthed importantly, I know, but that information costs money. Jessica gave him some money. The boy nodded. Then it's a deal, and led Jessica to some woods behind the station building. Julia suddenly thought that the boy had decided to take her into the woods and rob her. What if he killed her? Julia was suddenly terrified. She wanted to run away. But then something like a dugout came into view. We'll stop here, said the young guide carelessly. Give me the money. But I haven't seen him, said the girl reasonably. You think, said the boy approvingly. And they climbed inside. Michael Pilgrim was sitting at a table with a group of similarly poor people, eating quick noodles from a round paper bowl. An old electric kettle was boiling in the corner, standing on a large stump. Hello, Julia greeted her savior, and, noticing his perplexed look, asked, Didn't you recognize me? Should I? I mean, in general, to know you or should, asked the tramp, which confused her very much. 2 days ago, you saved my life, she replied, pulling herself together. There was a fire in my car, and you helped me out of it. I did, Michael nodded. As if it were no big deal, how could I ask for a light? And that my father told me to invite you to visit? He wants to thank you. And I wanted, the tramp said firmly. It's up to you, of course, but my father. You know, he said in a deep voice. Everything with you rich people is measured by money. Why do you say that? Julia thought money was out of the question, especially when someone like Papa David was involved. Don't you want to thank me? The enterprising boy reminded himself. Yes, of course. Julia caught up and, taking $10 out of her purse, handed it to the young vagrant. He nodded in satisfaction. Then he was blown away. And Julia continued to persuade Michael. He was reluctant for a long time, but finally agreed. Why? The boy didn't know. Or maybe it was a premonition? Come in, David said, trying to sound like a hospitable host. Frankly speaking, Michael felt terribly uncomfortable. His gaze was too intense. It was like an X-ray. They went into the living room, where the table was set for 3 people. In the middle of the table stood a large plate of dumplings, a salad of tomatoes and cucumbers, and a basket of fresh bread. It all looked very appetizing. But the guest found such a table a little strange. It was not the way he had imagined a meal in a rich house. How could a vagabond know what wealthy people ate? Besides, he assumed that rich people might like homemade dumplings and simple salads. Have a drink. David offered me a drink. No, thank you. I don't drink, Michael refused. Maxim, you don't drink, said the host. I think I'll have a gin and tonic. For about 20 minutes they were silent, concentrating on their food. The tramp ate carefully, without hurrying, and Julia liked it very much. Actually, he doesn't look like a bum, it suddenly occurred to her. Your name is Maxim, isn't it? David asked his guest, even though the man had introduced himself to him. Maxim nodded. Maxim, do you like Julia? The tramp almost choked on his dumpling, and when he looked at the owner's daughter, he realized that she was close to the same. And why this question? Asked the guest. Well, just answer, do you like it or not? Well, I like it, said Max, pretty, probably good character. And she's graduating from university this school year, David said proudly. She's going to be a translator or something. I'm happy for her, the homeless man nodded. not understanding what the questions were about. Julia didn't understand either, but she realized that her father had brought this up for a reason. Oh, for a reason. I'm so glad, the landlord smiled. Well, that's enough of that. I'd like to offer you Julia as my wife. Well, a reward for what? Max asked. How could it be a reward for what? You saved her life, said the tramp. I saved her life, said the tramp. All right, David said impatiently, thinking that the hobo was not so simple. But it's okay. I've been screwed over before. It doesn't matter, he said again. I could use smart, capable guys like you, Maxim. What about Julia? David asked, perplexed. Julia listens to me. So, looking at the girl, Max doubted it. Maybe she had obeyed her father before. This time, however, judging by the look on her face, she was the least likely to do so, and he wasn't far from the truth. I always knew I wasn't loved, David sighed. Julia pondered. But this was too much even for him. How is it possible to marry without her knowledge? It's just unbelievable. Isn't it, Julie? He asked his daughter with pressure. Daddy, I'm Julie, and I didn't know what to say, the girl admitted. In good conscience, I should have objected, but my tongue felt like it was stuck to the sky, and it was useless. If David Patrick Johnson had something in his head then, that was his final decision. Michael had enough of sitting. He got up and walked around the living room while father and daughter talked. The vagabond looked at the pictures without much interest, more of a machine. Suddenly one of the pictures caught his eye. But it can't be, Michael thought, looking into the young man's face, unable to hold back the tears that came to his eyes. Is something wrong? Johnson inquired, noticing the look on his face. Nothing's wrong, assured his guest, coping with his emotions. Michael sank into thought. The young drifter hadn't even realized that there were hidden sect cameras throughout the house. David Patrick Johnson had been suffering from persecution mania since childhood. He himself, however, he did not think so and said that he has a well-developed instinct of self-preservation. In addition, the businessman had one weakness: to observe people from the outside to analyze their behavior. This is an amateur psychologist for whom people are nothing more than puppets, Johnson reflected. Around the perimeter of each room, he ordered cameras to be installed, and now David, having seen his guest off, was reviewing the tape. Here they are having a conversation. And then, when I voiced my proposal, the bum gets up, walks around the living room, lingers on one of the pictures and cries. Yes, he was crying on the tape. It was very plain to see the tears running down this Michael's cheeks. And what would that mean? Thought a puzzled David. The photo the guest stopped beside was of his half-brother Jason Patrick Johnson. Does he really know the bum? The question continued to torment my father. But if that's really the case, where did they meet? We should take a closer look at him. Julia was looking at pictures from a classmate's birthday party when David knocked on her door. Offended, he stated. The girl remained silent. Julia, without saying a word, ran off to her room. This was more eloquent than any words, and it could not be said that David liked it. Well, you should, he said conciliatingly. He's not a bad guy. You should take a closer look. Julia didn't know what to say. All businessmen wanted to be related to their own kind, and they didn't have it all their own way. But on the other hand, the girl did not want to become the spouse of some businessman's offspring. Well, yes, what are they, if they do not have to fight for their place under the sun? Rich moms and dads are already all hustled up, she pondered. But Michael. Julia remembered the recent guest and suddenly thought that Daddy David was probably right. There was something about this guy. I guess that's charisma. And real, not created by expensive salons and hairdressers. But marrying him, Julia doesn't even know him, and if she did, then what? Mockingly asked the inner voice, and the girl realized she wanted to get to know Michael better. Her gut told her that this guy wasn't all that easy, so maybe she should really get to know him, but without getting married, of course. Now Julia knew where Michael lived, so now she wouldn't have to look for him. Michael Pilgrim occasionally worked part-time unloading merchandise at stores. That's what he did for a living. One of the places he worked part-time was a small store that sold confectionery. Can I give you some more cake? With a motherly look at Michael, Ann Adamson, the store owner, suggested. She really liked the guy. When Michael came to work part-time, Ann always had something tasty for her favorite. This kind woman of 50 years and a little always wondered why he did not study and did not try to realize himself. He's a capable boy, she thought. However, Ann never gave up hope of convincing the boy to think seriously about his life. Ann, good afternoon, she heard a familiar voice. Jessica stood before her. Hello, Jessica, spoke the shopkeeper affectionately. Anything new? Suggest something new. I can recommend the chocolate pudding cake with strawberries. The salesperson smiled. But your favorite red velvet is also available. It's all fresh, just unloaded. Ben, so what about the tactic? Julia turned to the handsome strange guy and exclaimed in surprise at Ben. He's the one. Grinned the new acquaintances, you could say potential fiancés. So you two know each other? Ann Adamson was unknowingly delighted. Well, sort of, Julia replied. Sort of, she nodded. I'll say more. Ben saved my life. Really? Exclaimed the hostess in surprise. Ben, is it true? The tramp was modestly silent. Really, Julia answered for him. Then we should drink to that. Adamson smiled at them. Tea, of course. Come into my office. She knew it would be useless to contradict Anne, and she didn't want to. Julia had always enjoyed talking to this woman. They'd met at the gym, and despite the age difference, they'd become friends. 3 years have passed since then, but Julia's friendship with the owner of the confectionery store only grew stronger. Sometimes the girl thought that the main reason for her affection for Anne was that she grew up without a mother. In addition, the relationship with Daddy Michael left much to be desired, and Anne Adamson was simply impossible not to love. Kind, open, with a great sense of humor, and always ready to come to the aid of someone who needs it. That's just the way she was. Anyway, Julia and Adamson were friends, and now it turns out that the eldest friend of Michael Johnson's adopted daughter knows Ben. So maybe it's fate. What did you do to please him? Very nice conversation this time. Julia was pleasantly surprised by Ben. What a smart, well-read guy. The girl thought with surprise. Very good. Anne Adamson whispered to her, catching the moment, and added with an obvious hint. He would like a girl who would take him in hand. But where would he get one? How long have you two known each other? Julia asked Ben as they left the store. No, he shrugged. I've been coming here part-time for a few months. Tell me a little about yourself, she asked. Wouldn't you like to? But Julia was silent. Something told her that Ben might not like her question. But having said, speak, she looked at him with interest and was definitely waiting for an answer. Julia continued, wouldn't you like to get an education, get a good job, and in general live like a normal person, you mean? Ben asked mockingly. What's your problem? How am I supposed to live? There's no sadness, the surprised girl replied. It's just that everything is easy for you. The tramp cut him off and walked toward the bus stop. Julia stared after him in despair, and suddenly, as if not realizing what she was doing, ran after him. Ben, she shouted. But the boy didn't even turn around. Julia caught up with the tramp after all, and just in time. Because at that moment a bus was coming, heading towards the bus station, and the girl miraculously managed to jump on it. Ben, what did I ask you? She exclaimed. For someone like you, maybe nothing. Ben shrugged. Well, to anyone. Everyone's the same. Everyone. Not everyone. Ben realized with horror that he was attracted to this girl, but he realized there was no future for them. No matter what her father said, Ben would be something to him. And then he suddenly remembered how this guy had offered him Julia as his wife, and he hadn't failed to publicize it. He said she was going to university. She'd be a translator or something. So he said, good daddy, he doesn't even know what his daughter will be when she graduates. He doesn't seem to want to know. That's how you treat a kid. Ben suddenly felt sorry for the girl. Why did he really yell at her? Those eyes like a hurt little girl's. I'm sorry about that, Ben said awkwardly. I don't know what came over me. Apology accepted. Julia smiled. Ben, aren't you in a hurry? No, he smiled back. There's a suggestion we sit in a cafe somewhere. To be honest, she hadn't really hoped Ben would agree. But suddenly, okay, replied the hobo, but on one condition. And what condition is that my treat? They sat in the cafe for about 2 hours and couldn't get enough of each other. How does he know so much? Julia wondered. None of these down-and-out majors could match Ben. It's getting dark, the boy noted. Yeah, it's getting dark early now, Julia agreed. You should walk, he suggested. What about you yourself? Chuckled his new friend. I don't burn in fire. I won't drown in water. You don't believe me? I believe, smiled the girl, looking thoughtfully into his eyes. You see, Michael was surprised, looking out the window, and yet she took offense. I, you might say, arranged her fate. The businessman looked curiously at the couple and waited for them to kiss. However, there was no kiss. Julia touched the tramp's shoulder and went home. How was your day? Michael asked good-naturedly. Fine, Julia nodded. Is that Ben? He's the foster daughter. So you two are dating? Daddy? Michael, you're so full of shit. The girl shook her head. Ben was with us 3 days ago. 2 of those days I didn't go anywhere, so when would I have started dating him? Well, yes, Johnson nodded absent-mindedly. I'm sorry, I wasn't thinking. Well, then we'd better speed it up. As an intelligent man, Michael knew he shouldn't do it out of the blue. Otherwise, it could spook the target. Julia should be pushed into it gradually. But to the businessman's great joy, he didn't have to do anything. He hired a private detective to follow Julia. And a week later, the bloodhound reported that the young people were dating. Well, the plague, he thought with satisfaction, looking at the photos that confirmed that his adopted daughter had indeed started dating Skies. Julia, what does your boyfriend do? Michael inquired. Ben works part-time at the stores, she replied. As a salesman? No, of course not, Julia grinned, picturing her boyfriend behind the counter, unloading merchandise. And, is he okay with that? Why am I asking? I'd like to offer him a job at my place. What kind of work? You know, like a security guard or something. We'll figure it out. That kind of generosity was unusual for Michael. I mean, what's weird about it? After all, he had already identified Ben to take, and to tell the truth, the idea now seemed quite tempting to Julia. But the question is to get Ben to agree, she said thoughtfully. Why wouldn't he? He might, she confirmed sullenly. Michael was even more surprised. And how does he plan to spend the rest of his life in a shack? What, in the woods behind the train station? Julia wondered. And really, what is he going to do next? After that incident in the candy store, Anne had never asked Ben about his plans again. After all, he's a grown man and surely knows what he wants out of life. Julia silently shrugged her shoulders, and Papa Michael said, "Anyway, dear, I'll say this, if you want to help your beau, and by the way, talked yourself into it. After all, it's in your best interest too." Johnson winked at his adopted daughter, and she felt uncomfortable, but deep down Julia really wanted to. So why not talk to Ben? What was there to hide? Ben Adams wanted to start a new life. He'd had enough of vagrancy. Although at first it had seemed to him in some way exciting, a kind of adventure, but it could only be interesting when he was young, and unfortunately is not eternal. Ben didn't like Michael Johnson, the slippery type, but on the other hand, was this any chance? No, he wasn't after riches, especially since none were in sight, and Ben wanted to be with Julia. And what could he offer her? Living in a dugout. So when his lover suggested working for her adoptive father and living in a mansion, Ben said that was probably an option. Well, what am I saying? Julia rejoiced. 2 weeks later, the former tramp and the entrepreneur's daughter got engaged. Michael's business partners, if they were surprised, didn't show it. They weren't interested in the identity of this poor man. Michael was also just glad that everything worked out the way he wanted it to. When Ben came to him for the second time, Michael said that he would keep order. When asked by the boy what exactly he was supposed to do, Johnson replied, "Make sure no crap got into the house." Michael was actually one of the residents of the mansion. Once handed over, his duties completely derailed. Everything would have been fine. But Michael puzzled over the question of how the future son-in-law knew his half-brother. In the end, the businessman decided to talk to him straight since Julia and this tramp were doomed. "Anne, do you know where Ben is now?" Johnson asked the elderly maid. "I think he was in the garden with Julia." "Well, call him to me," he ordered. "Call him in," Ben asked, catching him in the study. "Not summoned, but invited. We're practically related," the future father-in-law smiled, though the smile was more like a grin. "So what did you want, Michael Vladimirovich?" Ben asked impatiently. He didn't like being around this man. Ben decided when he and Julia got married, he would move out of his place. It was unlikely that the bride would mind. "I was wondering what your connection is to my half-brother. The day I took you out to lunch, you were looking too closely at one photo, and I think you even wept." "What do you mean?" Ben saddened and began to tell his sad story. After the sentencing, Jason Johnson's attorney appealed, but all he got for his client was a penal colony instead of a maximum security prison. There he met Ben's mother, who worked as a cook. "Uncle Jason was like family to me," the future son-in-law said. "A good man. You probably know he died of pneumonia." Michael nodded thoughtfully, looking out the window. "Where is your mother now after Jason's death?" Ben's mother, Olga, didn't want to move on after that. They dreamed of a new life after Jason's release. By the way, he was given a lesser sentence, so the return was real. The young woman did not come to terms with the loss of her beloved and became addicted to alcohol. That's what ruined her. Ben sighed. Suddenly he was angry with himself. "And why the hell am I pouring my heart out in front of this moral freak? This is my personal business." "Go on," Michael said. Ben remembered what his uncle had said about his daughter. So Julia was that daughter. God, it was a good thing his future father-in-law and former stepfather had turned out to be half-brothers. Otherwise, Ben wouldn't even want to think about it. "There's nothing to go on, really," he shrugged. "How come you started vagabonding?" After his mother died, Ben traveled to Boston for a new life, but the city didn't welcome him too warmly. The day he arrived, Ben got a job at a construction site and his passport was taken away. Fortunately, he had some money and he rented a small house on the outskirts. After a month, his paycheck was still not paid. He had to move out. The employers probably thought that without a passport he would not go anywhere, but he didn't. So Ben had to live on the streets. The bride's father was shocked at the turn of events. What a coincidence, some vagrant, the son of an alcoholic, turns out to be related to his brother. This did not make the businessman happy at all. He decided to get rid of the uncle and at the same time from the adopted daughter. But in order not to look suspicious, Michael would arrange their wedding. The newlyweds would be in his care, and then he would get rid of them both in one fell swoop. He was plotting a brutal plan to destroy the bride and groom. Johnson took over his son-in-law's paperwork. In early October, Ben and Julia became husband and wife. The wedding was modest. Why splurge if they were doomed anyway? But it didn't matter to Ben and Julia. They were together and knew that their married life would be happy regardless of Michael's money. They were determined to make a month's worth of money. Ben said after the wedding banquet, "That's the way it is. We'll live here, and then I'll raise money for a rented apartment. Do you agree?" "Of course I do," Julia exclaimed. A couple days after the wedding, They went to see Ann Adamson. Maybe she'd have some good advice, they thought. Well, first of all, congratulations, said Ann with a smile. And secondly, I'd love to help the new family. Ben, I thought you said you worked in construction. I did, he grimaced, remembering the way his employer had treated him. But then you've got the job in your pocket. A good friend of mine is doing repairs at the cottage. It's nothing special, just cosmetics. Can you do it, of course? I can do it, Ben assured him. The acquaintance turned out to be a nice man of about 45. He paid the Johnson couple in advance. Part of the money they put aside to rent an apartment, the rest they spent on living. True, there wasn't much money. David Patrick Johnson had no intention of helping the new family. He wasn't expected to. Ben and Julia were eagerly counting the days until they finally moved in with Michael. Nothing else mattered. However, fate had it differently. Maid Amber worked for David Patrick Johnson for 20 years, and all this time she and Julia had a tender and touching relationship. The girl lacked a woman's affection, and this kindest of women, God had not given her children. How unfair is life. When you and Ben have children, they'll be my great-grandchildren, Amber said dreamily. But of course Julia smiled, just as long as it wasn't as a maid. That was the way she'd hoped it would be. Amber, come into my office, Michael's commanding voice broke the idyll, which didn't bode well. Is something wrong? She asked timidly. You'll find out, the master said. Michael informed the old maid without any preamble that she was fired. But for what? A stunned Amber whispered. Why, Michael said. It's your age, you've done your time. It's time to retire. The youth thing was jarring, but she didn't seem to mind it at the moment. Amber was more concerned with what she was going to live on. You've been working here for 20 years, David Patrick Johnson added. I'd like to see some new young faces in my house. And imagine if Jessica and I have a baby, and who's going to help them with the baby? You. The old one. Yes, for me it would be happiness. Through tears answered the old assistant. Julia's like my own granddaughter, and now it's not a good time. He continued in his mind and ordered Amber to go pack her things. Okay, I'll leave with dignity, the assistant said, and went to her room. Amber packed her things and tears ran down her cheeks. She considered herself part of the family. Well, it seemed the master didn't think so. There he was, easy on the eyes. Amber, you'll take the check, David Patrick Johnson said, entering without knocking. He didn't even think about the fact that the maid might have changed clothes, but at least he didn't poke. Thank you for that. What pleasure would she have had throwing that envelope of money at that arrogant face? Except there wasn't a dime in her wallet. The card was empty too, so she overcame her pride, nodded, and put the money in the big plaid bag. When Michael left, Amber counted the money in the envelope, and it was exactly half of what she'd gotten. She didn't bother to confront him. She gathered her things and, swallowing tears, left the room. She wanted to leave unnoticed, but that wish wasn't going to happen. Amber, where are you going? Julia asked, not without surprise, as she walked up the stairs. And when she saw the tears in her eyes, she realized everything. What's wrong with you? He frowned. Amber said bitterly, Oh, come now, Mr. David. I'm old. It's time for a vacation. I can't cope, it seems. That's not true, Julia said hotly. You're doing a fine job. What's the matter now? Sighed the one that colored her not-so-happy childhood. Suddenly, Julia whispered, I need to talk to you. I'll be waiting for you in the park. The serious expression on Amber Adamson's face didn't just say. It screamed that she was about to tell Julia something very important. She was even getting a little scared. Okay, the foster daughter nodded. I'll be there in about 20 minutes. It was 20 years ago, Amber Adamson began. I had just come to work for David Patrick Johnson, your grandfather. Back then, Johnson's former maid fell silent. It was terribly difficult for her to talk about it. And what happened? Breathlessly, Julia asked. Then your grandfather was killed, the older woman whispered. And what a terrible guess flashed through her brain. But Julia refused to believe it. My father was in jail for that. Yes, for that, Amber Adamson confirmed in a trembling voice. The girl covered her mouth with her hand in horror. So this was why Papa Michael didn't love her. Everything fell into place. But he didn't. He didn't, Julia interjected incredulously. Then who did Jason Patrick Johnson? Are you sure? Are you sure? Amber Adamson said firmly. I saw it with my own eyes. It was Jason Patrick Johnson who hit his father over the head with a candlestick and then flipped it around as if Michael had done it. Jason Patrick Johnson called him into David Patrick Johnson's office on some pretext specifically to set him up, and then called the police. Everything pointed to Michael as the killer. I mean, he kept saying he didn't do it, but who'd listen to him? I mean, that's the way it is here, isn't it? If there's a man, there's a story, isn't there? Yes, Julia said with a sigh. I'm sorry, girl, that I've been quiet all this time. I was just afraid that Jason Patrick Johnson might have straightened me out as well. Julia was shocked. And that Daddy Michael was afraid all along, she realized, afraid of being exposed. It was reckless of him to fire Amber. I guess he figured that since she'd kept quiet for 20 years. The secret would die with her. Well, it didn't. I understand, Julia said, and burst into tears, hugging the maid. To her, she was like family, if not closer. For about 10 minutes they sat hugging, and then Julia said quietly but firmly, "He won't get away with it this time. But the statute of limitations. I'll do whatever it takes to get the case overturned," she said firmly, and took her cell phone out of her pocket and dialed the emergency number. Ben walked home after work and thought about the fact that it wasn't long before moving into a rented apartment. What are the police doing here? Ben was frightened when he saw a blue and white car outside his house. He loved his wife Julia very much, and the first thing that came to his mind was, has something happened to her? And when he saw someone being led out, his heart jumped fearfully somewhere in his stomach. Did Michael massacre his adopted daughter? Ben quickened his step, but a policeman blocked his path. "Your papers," he said sternly. "Please," Ben replied, and pulled a passport from the inside pocket of his jacket. "This is my husband," said, perfectly alive and well Julia. "He's here from work." "Well, I see." The law enforcement officer nodded. For good measure, still looking at Ben's passport, he explained. "A criminal case has been opened against Michael Johnson, as Julia had anticipated. The statute of limitations had been disregarded. Her father was posthumously rehabilitated, and his half-brother went to prison. He was charged not only with murder, but also with perjury. All the assets that Michael had went to the rightful owner, that is, the native daughter of the wrongfully convicted Jason Patrick Johnson. Julia, of course, was glad that justice had been served, but if it could bring her father back. "Don't be sad," Ben said quietly as he put his arm around his wife's shoulders. "I'm sure Uncle Jason is watching us from heaven and rejoicing for us." "You're right." "You think so?" Julia smiled. "I am sure of it." A month passed. Ben and Julia, though they were already married, decided to have a wedding again. Like the previous one, it wasn't too crowded, but it was very beautiful. For the banquet, they chose one of the best restaurants in the city. "This is the kind of wedding you deserve," exclaimed Amber Adamson, who was the guest of honor, if it weren't for her confession and then testimony in court. Ben and Julia would most likely no longer be in the world. She was now living with them as part of the family. Michael was right. The old housekeeper really should have taken a well-deserved vacation. She could babysit her grandchildren. By the way, the first grandson or granddaughter was due in a few months. Another guest of honor was, of course, Ann Adamson. The wedding cake in the form of a castle in paradise looked like a real masterpiece. "I love you fondly," Ben said. "And I you," Julia replied. "I hate to think what would have happened if my car hadn't burst into flames." And they laughed merrily. Accidentally overhearing a conversation between her husband and his mistress, Linda decided. Linda screamed and jumped on the stool. The huge gray mouse looked carefully at the woman with its black eyes and, as if nothing had happened, went towards the plinth under the windowsill. The mouse disappeared into some invisible crevice. "Mum, why are you shouting?" Came a voice from the corridor. "Mia," Linda said, laughing as she climbed down to the floor. "And we're not the only people here." "What do you mean?" A sleepy, disheveled teenage girl in a wide pink t-shirt appeared in the doorway. "She's hiding." Linda nodded toward the windowsill. "She seemed to have a well-established route." "A mouse," Mia said, as if in disbelief. "Where would it come from?" "A new home. I'd understand if we'd moved into a holler." "Mom, maybe you're imagining things. You haven't slept much, have you?" "Well," Linda laughed. "Maybe you've never seen mice, only mice in cages. I grew up in the country. There was a lot of this stuff there. I'm sure I wouldn't confuse it with anything else. Still, it's strange. Where did it come from?" "Economical housing?" My daughter grumbled skeptically. "From the ventilation, I suppose. They haven't installed the extractor yet. It must have come out of that hole over there. We should call a pest control service right away." "Don't you feel sorry for the mouse?" Mother frowned. "It's so small." "Where there's a mouse, there's a pack of mice." Mia wagged her finger. "Mum, you're like a little girl. You always feel sorry for everyone. It's not a house mouse. It's a real pest. If we let it in, it'll eat everything." "Yes, you're right." My daughter, the woman, shook her head. "Maybe we'd better get a cat. We'll get rid of it naturally, so to speak." "I don't know. Dad won't like it." "You know he's had a thing for cats since childhood, don't you?" "I used to ask him for a kitten when I was little. And if he was allergic or something, he just didn't like them. I'd get one. It's more fun with a cat. I'm alone at home all day." "Do you go to school or out with your friends?" "Dad's at work. Isabella only comes round when she wants to chat. Lately she's disappeared. She doesn't even answer messages. Aunt Isabella's a real piece of work. I don't even know why you hang out with her. She's mean. And I think she's making eyes at Daddy." Mia sat down at the table with her arms crossed over her chest. Come on, Isabella's fine. I've been friends with her since we were in high school. Yeah, she's got a bit of a temper, of course. Dad thinks she's a bitch. I'm the only one who knows her well. She's miserable. She's so beautiful, smart, but her love life is a failure. I feel sorry for her. You always feel sorry for everyone. Aunt Isabella is a real bitch. Her life doesn't work out because everyone else is bad, but because she has too many expectations. She doesn't think of men as people. She just takes money from them. She's an arrogant fool. Mia, you can't talk about people like that. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with that? You're the one with the rose-colored glasses, aren't you? I'm telling you, look at your girlfriend or she'll steal our dad. What's she care? She'll play with it and throw it away and ruin our family. Mia, don't be daft. Michael would never even look at Isabella. I mean, how could you think Dad would do something like that? We've been together for 14 years. I never thought he'd even consider another woman, much less my mate. Men don't think with their heads, and Aunt Isabella is a master manipulator. Okay, let's drop it. I just want you to know that she's flirting with him. I've seen it myself, and a woman can't hide it. You're a woman. Come on, let's have breakfast, cause the tea's gone cold while we're talking about that Brazilian soap opera. I don't have to be at school till 12 today, Mia said as she took a bite of her sandwich. Mrs. Brown's taking us to the museum today. Oh yeah? You didn't even say anything about a field trip. Do you need any money? Yeah, I've got some. Dad gave it to me yesterday. I forgot to tell you. You always do. Linda looked at her daughter reproachfully. You didn't forget to tell me about Aunt Isabella, but about the museum. Where are you going? Yes, the local history museum. There's some new exhibit there. How will the little ones take us? At least I'll get to hang out with Oscar. He's obsessed with all that stuff. He's such a nerd. He'll never come to school. He's all about his studies. Oscar is a very nice boy. I've known his mom for a long time. She's a nice, intelligent woman. I thought he was going to study archaeology. He's right to study. You've got a lot on your mind right now. You're all smart, advanced, supposedly knowledgeable about life, but in reality, it's all entertainment and the cult of video clips. You should do your homework too. You got a C in physics. Why? You've always been so clever and keen to learn. It was Mr. Smith. He gave everyone a C. It was just a mood. Mia, you're not everyone. You always have to be a cut above the rest. It's just a teacher in a bad mood. I know you're Mr. Smith, he's a bastard. But you've got to be able to find a way to get along. You can't get along with him, Mom. He made Olivia cry, too. He said people like her can't take in information. They can only bat their eyelashes. And he started telling her something about waves, that she was flapping her eyelashes and didn't even know what kind of vibration she was creating. Well, of course. Okay, it's up to you, but fix your grades. You probably hate getting C's yourself. And Oscar? Don't overdo it, or you'll embarrass the boy, you perky girl. It's all right, Mum. Mia wrinkled her nose. Are we having a housewarming party this weekend? Of course, I've already invited the guests. Tomorrow we just need to install the extractor fan to make the kitchen look nice. It's not proper to welcome guests like this. At least stay with us for an hour, or you'll go out again. I will. Mia kissed her mother on the cheek and headed for the exit. Thanks for breakfast. Linda was shelving books and figurines. She didn't like the new flat, but she had to move. They used to live in the center, in a spacious Stalinist building overlooking the river. But life had turned out so that Michael had run up large debts. Business was going badly, and the sale of an expensive and oversized flat of 4 rooms was a forced measure. The new 1-bedroom was in a new building on the outskirts. The place was quite quiet and decent. There was a forest park nearby. From the balcony on the 13th floor, there was a magnificent view of the city, especially in the evenings when the lights were on. Yes, and it was closer to Mia's school from here. One car had to be sold too, but Linda didn't drive much, so she parted with it without regret. But now Michael was doing better. He managed to pay off the loan and get rid of the headache of calls from creditors. I have to do something about my job, Linda thought. My remote work, of course, brings income, but it's not enough. Especially with Michael, it's unclear what's going on. He's been ripped off by his partner, robbed, you might say. Well, at least the debts have been sorted out and the suppliers are showing off they've raised their prices. If it goes on like this, I'll have to close the business and we'll both have to go to the factory. And Mia's at an age where money is like water. It's like water. Where am I going to go? Since I left the office, I'm not used to dealing with people. All I know how to do is make estimates. But I need customers. As long as I've been working remotely, I've been working with the same ones. It's not like I'm on a notice board offering my services. I know that an estimator can become a millionaire, but I'm not at that level. And I don't want to abandon the house. Well, I'll think about it at my leisure. In the meantime, I've got to call Isabella to see if she's coming on Saturday. Mia does talk such rubbish. Yeah, Isabella's gonna make eyes at Michael. I don't know what she's thinking. Objectively speaking, my girlfriend's a money hound. Ever since she was young, she's never been much for feelings. It's just the way she is. But Michael's not much to take. I don't believe she's in love with him. No way. I'd rather see that mouse go into space. That's more likely. Michael, of course, a good man, but objectively not handsome and boring. But as a husband and father, he's completely fulfilled. Mia loves us a lot because of his failures, worries not because of ambition, and that we will be worse off. He's kind. Linda dialed her friend's number. Hello? Isabella's voice came through. I hear you're in a good mood. Linda laughed into the receiver. Oh, Linda, I was just thinking about you. What's up? How's the housewarming party going? Can you believe I saw a mouse in the kitchen today? What, a mouse? Did Mia bring it in? No, a real mouse. It must have crawled out of the vent. We'll put the extractor fan on tomorrow. I hope we don't get any more visitors like that. I'm just sorting out my things. You like it there? After the choir in the center, it must be uncomfortable. Yes, it's bearable, Isabella. You can get used to anything. It's all about having a roof over your head. And my daughter has her own room. We're not posh, of course, but it's decent enough. Quiet courtyard, parking, children's playground. The view is beautiful, and I can't hear the neighbors, so it's fine. You'll see for yourself on Saturday. You're coming, right? Where would I go? Isabella laughed. Can I bring you anything? Yes, I've got everything. Don't be ridiculous. We're not impoverished, but just temporarily lowered the standard of living. Oh, Linda. We'll get through this. Thank you, Isabella. I love you so much. My family may be skeptical about you, but they're wrong. Let them think what they want. What do I care? You're my friend, and I don't criticize your daughter's friends. I'm sure there's some pretty good ones out there. And you shouldn't listen to Michael. He understands a lot about people. He worshipped Arnold, thought he was his friend. And what did he end up with? A multi-million-dollar debt and a ruined business. Now you're looking for Arnold. You're right, aren't you? God, Isabella, why are you always right? Life has taught me. I can see right through people. You know, I've been with all kinds of people. Now I don't care about anyone at all. I wondered if I love myself. What do you love? Not a damn thing. I've been running away from myself all my life. I'm 30 years old with a big tail. What have I got? Emptiness, pain, and a box full of gifts from different men. It's not fulfilling. You need a child, Isabella. You think about it, where to give birth to a child in this crazy world. And there's no man. Not from the Holy Ghost. Well, that's no problem at all. You can find a donor. It's not like we're building a relationship. Or go to a specialized center. It's a popular trend these days. No, I can't do that, Linda. I have to do it for love. Oh, don't be ridiculous. You still believe in love. Like you said, you're well past 30. You don't have to worry about love anymore. Michael and I never really had much love. But that doesn't stop us from appreciating and respecting each other. And I've never been greedy for romance. Well, I'm not you, Linda. My feelings always come first. Right? Linda grinned to herself. Money comes first. You've got someone to take advantage of. Love of money, to be more precise. It's up to you, she continued aloud. But don't let that train get away. I'm glad I had Mia early, but now she's big, and I'm not old yet, and I can live a little longer. Isn't that right? but I can't do that anyway. And all those nappies, all those nappy things, I'll have to revise them all my life. And I don't want to go round hospitals looking like a tortured man, wiping the floor looking for a doctor to help me conceive. You don't think it'll work without IVF? Isabella, 35 is not 45. Can you still get pregnant on your own? Let's leave this topic, it's boring, Isabella laughed. Anyway, wait for me on Saturday. Okay, it's a deal, Linda smiled and said goodbye. The guests were sitting at the table in the room that served both as a living room and a bedroom. Linda, responding to the back of the sofa, laughed merrily as she told her mates about the mouse marching briskly through their kitchen. Mia, in the company of her friend Mary, was showing an older couple, friends of the family, the view from the balcony. They were having fun, and some of them were even trying to dance to the jazz playing from the speakers. Linda noticed that the bottles of wine on the table were empty and went to the kitchen to get more. Michael walked towards her. The man was already quite drunk. Michael, I wondered where you'd disappeared to. Linda exclaimed. No sign of Isabella either. Your girlfriend's in the kitchen. We were talking to her. Did you two have another clash of opinions? Not at all. Isabella's gaunt figure appeared behind her husband. We had a very nice chat. I confess I underestimated your husband, Linda. I always thought he was such a stale, narrow-minded wimp. Turns out Michael just doesn't know how to relax. A couple of glasses of wine can loosen his tongue. I can see why you married him. He can make you laugh, and he can keep the dialogue flowing. What is it about you? I wonder such a conversation. Surprised Linda. She herself and her husband rarely talked about interesting topics. Usually all the conversations were about everyday life, her daughter, another purchase, or discussion of watched episodes of some TV series. So, about various things, Isabella answered vaguely. Love. Michael purred. Love? Linda interjected. Yes, Isabella nodded, not letting Michael answer. He loves you, it turns out. I always thought your marriage was a marriage of honor. No offense, Linda. You never know from the outside what's going on. Household, work, teenage daughter. You don't go out to restaurants, you don't even go out together. Where's the romance? What romance, Isabella? We've been married for so many years. How many years? Michael perked up, leaning against the wall. What does time matter? You're wrong, Linda. There should always be room for romance, bouquets, candy. Really? The wife looked closely at her husband. Why don't you show it in any way? Flowers only on the 8th of March, candy usually yourself all and eat. Linda, do not wind up, held her friend. And you, Michael, go to the guests, because they are bored without you. That's right, I wanted to show Mr. Wilson the new tools, the man blinked. Go on then. Or Mr. Wilson has already lost you. For some reason, Lyda was very angry with her husband. When Michael left, Isabella looked her friend straight in the eye. Linda, what are you doing? You just jumped on your husband out of nowhere. Isabella, what is he saying that's so hurtful? Hey mate, he's drunk. Why are you listening to him? Do you want flowers? What flowers? No. What does flowers have to do with anything? He's just saying you can't have romance without romance. I wish you'd do something about it. You say he loves me, but I don't feel it. I mean, it shouldn't be weird. I mean, we got married more out of convenience than anything else. No, of course we had feelings, but we both needed a stamp in our passports. My mum pressed me, and he was told at work that he'd be promoted, that family men were preferred. And since we had been friends for a long time, we decided to make a fake marriage. And then we realized we were good together, comfortable and fun. Mia was born. Linda, you should be happy. What is love anyway? You know how many people get married for love and then run away from each other after a year. You have stability, a union based on respect. To me, that's worth a lot. Although I myself would only marry for love. I can't do otherwise. What's wrong with me? Linda suddenly took offense. I too, maybe want to be carried in my arms, showered with compliments, kissed tenderly, and not as a duty officer, taking a shift. You're so interesting, Linda. Isabella was indignant. You should marry for love. What's the problem? What you sow is what you reap. Have you forgotten? It's silly to expect a man who's just a friend to love you. And you love him too, by the way. Don't tell me now that Michael makes you feel passionate. Well, Linda said uncertainly. I guess you're right. I love Michael, but not as a man, more as a family member. A husband, not a lover. I don't mean that in a bad way. I only sleep with him once a month, and that's out of obligation. I feel that he is not much attracted to me, and I do not feel much desire myself. Maybe Isabella squinted. Don't get me wrong, Linda. Maybe you should find another man. What are you talking about? The woman darted her eyes at her friend. Why do you say that? We have a family. It's not like I'm some kind of... It's cheating. Don't shout like that. Isabella put her hand on Linda's shoulder. Why is it cheating? Cheating is when you love someone, you're devoted to them, and then you stumble, and that's it. What about you? You live like this, Linda. You'll die before you even know what love is. And a woman only reveals herself when she feels loved. Stop living like a robot. What makes you happy? Me? Linda thought. Mia. Your Mia is already a big horse. You wait a couple more years, she won't even call you. She'll fly out of the nest. What are you going to do then? Unloved husband. Loneliness, boring work, old age creeping up on you. Why do you say such scary things? Well, isn't it true? Well, isn't it true? I know what I'm talking about, Linda. I'm 35, just like you. The only difference is that I don't have a husband or kids. I do have a good job and I love it. But that's not going to last forever. And the fact that I don't have any luck with men. You know, yes, none of them ever made me married, but for the time I was with each of them, I felt really happy. For a woman, it's synonymous loved and happy. There's no other way to put it. You know, I'll keep looking for men like that, not trying to get them to marry me. And then, when I will be 60 years old, I will find some quiet grandfather, and I will live differently, simply, calmly and measured. Although nowadays even at 60 ladies can be so hot. Did you see Miss Argentina? Isabella, I will never accuse you or try to change your mind. Your views and beliefs, your lifestyle, it's all yours. I respect your choice, but I can't do it myself. I don't know if it's my upbringing or my morals. And if Michael found out and Mia found out, it would be a nightmare. I can't let my family down for my own amusement. You're a fool, Linda. You're just going to feel guilty in your old age for sticking to your stupid principles. Well, that's up to you. I'm not going to persuade you. I respect your opinion as much as you do, even if it doesn't agree with mine. Let's go to the guests. You went to get the wine. There's still a couple of bottles left. Let's get it. Lita was holding her smartphone with the app shop open. Her thumb was already hovering over the button install, but the woman still did not dare. Almost 5 months had passed since the housewarming conversation with her friend. And although Linda immediately dismissed the idea of cheating, her relationship with Michael was only getting worse. Mia went on holiday to a language camp. She didn't really want to go there, but when the girl found out that Oscar was going there, she immediately began to process her parents. Michael flatly refused to pay. The money was really very little. But seeing her daughter's upset face, Linda pulled a plastic card out of the cupboard and gave it to Mia. It contained enough money to pay for the camping trip, the road and pocket money. Mia was overjoyed. Her father only grumbled grudgingly, saying that the money would have been better invested in business. Linda hummed and said that the amount was ridiculous for a business, but it would make the child happy. And there was nothing to talk about. Linda didn't like her husband's reaction at all. He'd never denied Mia anything before. He adored his daughter. But lately something had changed. Linda couldn't figure out what it was. Only her husband's company came out of the minus and began to slowly recover, as the money at home became even less. Michael explained it by the fact that every penny invested in the business and should tighten their belts. He stopped giving his daughter pocket money. Linda had to cut out of her own salary, but recently there were not so many orders. The last straw was when Michael didn't come home. The man stayed at work to check some reports. Linda called her husband to find out what to cook for dinner, and in response she heard a scolding and an insistent request not to interfere with him. That evening the woman sat at her desk and thought she was miserable. Isabella was right on all counts. When a woman is unloved, nothing brings her joy. Normally Mia would dampen that feeling of loneliness by reminding Linda that she was a mother and loved by her child. But Mia was far away, and she was to spend the next fortnight abroad. Linda thought long and hard and finally decided to install a dating app for herself. Her conscience tormented her a lot, but the desire to experience a strong feeling was drawing her in, and it was getting harder and harder to control herself. Realizing that she couldn't handle it, the woman still clicked the install button. The interface was quite simple. Linda had never used anything like it, but she figured it out quickly. She uploaded a couple of photos of herself, filled out a form. The likes came pouring in. The woman began to study the candidates. Mostly guests from the East and young boys wrote. She didn't want to answer them at all. Moreover, most of the proposals were quite vulgar, and even frankly obscene. Linda quickly got bored and put the phone away. Before going to bed, she went back to the app. More than 100 messages had accumulated. Lita flipped through the list, sometimes even replied. And then one man caught her eye. His face seemed vaguely familiar. The woman immediately began to go through the memory of all the acquaintances, matching the age and name, but no one came to mind. Still, she decided to answer. The guy was called Ethan, a simple American name, a simple face with huge blue eyes. Linda liked him immediately. The man was a little older. He was pleasant and delicate in communication. He didn't ask for photos, didn't throw his own. He simply offered to meet and get acquainted in person, to understand at once whether it was necessary to continue communication, rather than to drag the rubber with endless messages. And Linda agreed. Yes, she was embarrassed in front of her husband and daughter, but she hadn't done anything about it yet. The meeting at the coffee shop seemed harmless enough. After all, no one was forcing her to continue that interaction. Maybe Ethan would be a good friend too. But deep down, Linda realized that she really liked this man. It seemed that they had known and understood each other for a long time. The meeting was scheduled for the next day. Linda chose a place that was far from home and where neither she nor Michael ever went. The woman couldn't sleep until almost morning. She tossed and turned for a long time, her head hot, curiosity and conscience arguing. Finally, she passed out. The alarm clock beeped demandingly, forcing Linda to get up sooner. The woman rose, writhing unhappily. There was the sound of water running from the bathroom. What's that? She shuddered. Had Michael returned? Lita got up, threw on a dressing gown and went into the corridor. Her husband's shoes stood in the hallway. On the banquette settled his briefcase. The woman walked to the kitchen to quickly prepare breakfast. She fried eggs and boiled coffee. Smells good. Michael appeared in the doorway, wiping his wet hair with a towel. I thought you'd never come back. Somehow hopelessly said the wife. Yes, I just had to wash up and have breakfast. Michael kissed Linda on the cheek. I've been sitting up all night. My head is spinning. I'd give half a kingdom for a coffee right now, and all I get at the office is instant. You have no idea what's going on with the paperwork in there. And we have an audit coming up. The accountant who came in with Arnold, she's got my hair all over the place. I'm going again. You sit down to breakfast. Linda pulled away. The unfortunate conscience pricked her heart, and the woman was ready to give up meeting with Ethan. Looking at her husband, so tired and indignant at the same time, she only wanted to take care of him, to prepare dinner and meet him in the evening, as she always did. Michael ate hastily and packed quickly. When he left, Linda picked up her phone to text Ethan and cancel the meeting, but there was already a message waiting for her, which abruptly changed her plans. Hi, beautiful. I would like to write poems to make your awakening pleasant, but alas, I'm not a poet, so I'll just wish you a good morning and the most pleasant experience. I hope that no evil forces will interfere with our meeting. Linda was very pleased to read this. She hadn't heard anything like that in a long time. She'd hardly heard anything like that in a long time. The words, though printed in a soulless application, seemed sincere and radiated some warmth. Linda hesitated, but decided to reply that everything was in order. By noon she was ready, had done a light makeup, and had not gone too far with her outfit. The woman threw on a light floral dress, let her hair down and shoved her feet into simple beige sandals. Placing her sunglasses on the bridge of her nose, she hailed a taxi and drove to the meeting place. Ethan was waiting for her in a half-empty cafe, sitting on a velvet quilted sofa. When the man stood up to greet Linda, she even whistled. The guy was about 2 meters tall and very well built. He was about 2 meters tall and very well built. He had muscles under his shirt that the thin fabric couldn't hide. Hi. Ethan smiled broadly, hugging Linda. The woman immediately noticed that the perfume of her new acquaintance was very expensive multifaceted and amazing. Hi, Linda smiled back. To be honest, I didn't believe you were coming until the last minute, the guy admitted. It was hard to understand in my head what such a woman forgot on this site. I have not registered so long ago, but I have already had time to study the contingent. Yeah, Linda grinned. And what kind of contingent is that? A symbol maker, divorcees with a trailer, as they like to call it nowadays, who try to place their girls from Central Asian guests with someone better, desperate women in years. Yeah, lots of them. Who are you looking for, if it's no secret? Lida studied the menu thoughtfully, glancing at Ethan with one eye. What if I'm a dishwasher or a divorcee too? No, Linda. You're definitely not a dishwasher, I can tell. And you didn't pick the most expensive cafe. They usually want the best restaurant in town. I went on a date with one of them, and I almost maxed out my credit card. I'm not ready to be a sponsor. The thought of a relationship for money disgusts me. I'm divorced myself. I just need a man with a soul, who will listen to my whining, stroke my head, and say that everything will be fine. It motivates me a lot. If you even have a kid, that's okay, I'm willing to accept. I don't have my own, but I've always wanted one. My wife was a real piece of work. All she thought about was looks and money. I don't know how I got married, but my parents insisted. All they wanted was grandchildren. So I went along with it. Anne didn't want kids at all. In the end, she's off to Dubai to live with some Arab. I never really had much love for her. She had her good moments, so I'm grateful to her. You are? To be honest, I don't know what I want. I don't want to lead you on. I'm married. I've been married to my husband for almost 15 years. We have a daughter, Mia. Lately, I've realized I don't feel anything for Michael, and neither does he for me. We didn't marry for love, we just wanted to support each other. Over time, feelings did not develop. Just as friends, we live as relatives, good acquaintances. So I decided to register in the app. I didn't think it would come to a meeting, especially so quickly. But don't think I'm a cheater or a traitor, although my conscience is eating me up. It's all Isabella's fault, my friend. She put the idea into my head a few months ago. I didn't see it that way then. I realize now that Michael's been a real pain in the arse. Isabella told me that a woman without love is unhappy. And you immediately decided to look for love on a dating site? Ethan laughed. No, I do not think you are some bad. 1,000 women are unhappy in marriage. Someone is beaten, someone is humiliated, not appreciated, and everyone is not loved. I agree with your friend, but the same thing happens to men. It is from the outside we are so tough, independent, and unapproachable, but in the heart of all want this love, at least understanding. But even that is often unattainable. I registered myself because I realize I can't go on living like this. And I see how your face reflects everything inside. I'm not pulling you into bed, just chatting. Finding a soulmate is a breakthrough. Sometimes you just want to talk to someone warm and bright, and there's no one to talk to. Thank you for understanding me and not criticizing me. I'm sick of it. It's a mental emptiness. I realized at 35 that I'd never been in love, and I couldn't tell anyone what was going on inside me. Mia wouldn't understand me, she's young. Isabella, we're too different. Michael, when his business started to fail, he shut down. He won't even listen to me. It's all about money. Money, money, money in his mind and in his conversation. You work by yourself? Yes, but at home. I'm an estimator. The orders are stable, but I don't make much money. Especially after the sale of the flat, I've had to tighten my belt. I paid for a trip to a language camp. It took my whole stash. But I can't deprive my child of joy, especially when she has her first love there. And the boy went. His father flatly refused to sponsor the trip, and I couldn't stand to see her cry. You did the right thing. Especially when you're a teenager, you don't want to disappoint a child who loses faith in her parents. Mia's not like that. She and I are very close, but there's still a generational conflict. What do you do? Me? Ethan squinted. I have my own flower business. You have seen, probably around the city shops fan. Are they yours? Surprised Linda. Yes. And by the way, I completely forgot. Ethan nodded to the waiter who brought their order. In a minute, the boy brought a huge bouquet of pink peonies of a wonderful color, which Linda had never even seen before. Sorry, I asked the guys to put them in water. Wow, These are for me." Linda was genuinely surprised, inhaling the fragrance of the flowers. "How beautiful. I've only seen them in pictures." "Don't tell me that your husband doesn't give you flowers," squinted Ethan. "Only duty bouquets on the 8th of March and birthday." "Somehow we got it that way. By the way, it was because of flowers, and I thought that in my life something wrong. Michael said himself there's no romance. Who's supposed to create it? Me? That's not a fair game. If you want, I could send you flowers every day. Just like that." Although Michael probably wouldn't understand that. No, he wouldn't. "I'd love to get flowers like that, but I don't know how to explain it to him, but I'll take it. Don't worry. I'll think of something. I love peonies. I'm glad I pleased you," smiled the man. "By the way, do you want to go for a walk after the cafe? Maybe to the seafront? I've never been there since the renovation, but I used to walk there a lot." "I'd love to." Linda nodded. "You can see my old flat from there, by the way. We lived by the river, and I used to walk there with Mia. I haven't been since we moved." "That's great." Linda looked with admiration at the bouquet, which she placed in a vase on the dresser. Michael believed her fiction that the flowers had been sent by a customer as a token of gratitude for 5 years of cooperation. Linda breathed a sigh of relief. She was already ready to listen to a profanity-laced stream of words, but she got around it. Ethan did not go out of her head. During the walk, Linda had become convinced that this man was not only comfortable to be around, but also had a lot to talk about. He could support any topic, even her boring estimates. And in general, all communication was as if they had known each other for 1,000 years. At first, Linda even thought they had, because Ethan still seemed familiar to her. But she couldn't have known him. The man had been born in another city and had moved here when Linda was already married. Perhaps his face had just appeared in the business bulletins around town, because Ethan's shops were quite popular. As she made herself more comfortable in the bed, Linda fell asleep. Michael was snoring away from her by then. In the morning, she heard the doorbell ring. The door was opened by Michael. He was already awake and cooking something in the kitchen. Lida was in no hurry to get up. She only heard someone come in. Did someone come to Michael's house? She thought through sleep. If it was for me, he would have called me. All right, I'll sleep a little longer. But the dream had passed. Linda reluctantly got out of bed, threw on some clothes, and quietly left the room. In the hallway, she immediately saw the familiar shoes. They were Isabella's. Linda was embarrassed. So she's the one who came. Why didn't Michael call me? Where are they? Linda froze and listened. There were quiet voices coming from the kitchen. The door was closed. The woman was surprised, but then she thought she just didn't want to be woken up. If Isabella wasn't in a hurry, she could have waited for her friend to get up. Except that she rarely came in without calling. That made Linda a little wary. Immediately, the thought that something was wrong popped into her head. Linda tiptoed to the door to hear what the conversation was about. It wasn't her habit to eavesdrop, but curiosity got the better of her. When are you going to tell her? Isabella's voice was quiet but excited. Apparently, she was pacing the kitchen. Isabella, don't rush things. I'm thinking, but I don't know how. I don't want to traumatize her. Linda's a dear person to me, after all. Dear? When you put the baby in me, did it bother you at all? You can see my belly soon enough. How am I supposed to explain all this? I may have been mean to Linda by sleeping with you, but I don't want to cheat on her any further. Calm down. I'll think of something. In fact, why don't you just tell her you've had artificial insemination? You guys had a conversation about it once. What if the baby looks like you? Do I have to tell her that you're a noble donor? Don't be ridiculous. You have to come clean. Isabella, she'll kick me out in a heartbeat. I don't want to leave at all. I'm comfortable here. I don't love my wife as a woman, but I respect her. We have a daughter. Mia will hate me. He respects her. Who's been whispering things in my ear, burning with desire? Is that how you respect your wife? I'm sorry, I've never been married, so I might not know something. Don't be sarcastic. We were both wrong. Yes, I like you a lot, more than I like you. But I'm not ready to leave my family. I'll give you money for the baby. Don't worry about it. I've given so much already. I can't even give Mia pocket money. But you're welcome. But don't pressurize me, otherwise I'll just say that you've made it all up for your own purposes and then don't count on anything at all. Oh, you scared me. Michael, by now we can do a DNA test and prove it's your baby. Don't be ridiculous. What century are we living in? Anyway, it's up to you how you explain this to Linda. If you wait any longer, I'll do it myself. She is such a person, she will forgive you if you confess honestly. The longer we hide it, the worse it will turn out. Linda stood there, trying not to move. What she had heard did not make sense to her. God, she bit her lip and slowly, trying not to make a sound, headed back into the room. So Michael and Isabella were sleeping together. Not only that, but she's pregnant. This is crazy. When did they have time? Always like cat and dog, and now. And anyway, how did Isabella get her hands on Michael? He's not her type. Not at all. What a friend. How could she do that? I can understand Michael. Even now he's admitted he has no feelings for me. But Isabella, I've always trusted her. Even more than I trusted myself. What am I supposed to do now? Should we all raise her together? It's a load of bollocks. On the one hand, I'm happy for Isabella. It'll be good for her. But it's my husband's child and I can't just stand by and say nothing. What do they expect me to do? Just accept it. They're targeting the wrong person. They think I'm a wuss and a pussy? I'll give them hell. Linda slammed the door noisily to attract attention. She immediately walked towards the kitchen. Michael was waiting for her at the door, a look of surprise mixed with fear on his face. Isabella peered timidly from the table. "Why are you making so much noise?" Michael asked, trying to kiss his wife on the cheek. "Yes, it's a drat," Linda replied grudgingly. "Isabella, what are you doing here? What are you doing here so early? And on your day off?" "Yes, I'm on my way back from a visit," replied sweetly. "I was close. I thought I'd stop by for a morning coffee. And Michael said you were still asleep, so we're just sitting here waiting for you to wake up. You gave us such a fright when you slammed the door. Scared when you have something to hide." Linda grimly decided and headed for the coffee machine. Isabella and Michael looked at each other in surprise. It didn't escape Linda's notice, and neither did Michael's slight squint or the tilt of his head that meant no. "What are you talking about?" he asked his wife. "Yes, they say that, don't they?" Linda laughed. "Why are you both so tense, or are you really hiding something?" "Oh, right. I've got it all figured out." Linda looked at both of them enigmatically. Isabella turned a little pale, and Michael's cheekbones turned jaundiced. "Come on, confess. You want to surprise me for my birthday, don't you? It's only a couple of weeks away. Why didn't I realize?" She laughed. Isabella laughed nervously, and Michael laughed back. "Man, I can never hide anything from you." Isabella said, "We're really going to surprise you." At least she's not lying, Linda thought, staring at her friend. And she's not even ashamed. "It's okay, I'll get you guys." And I blamed myself for starting to talk to Ethan, because hypocrisy is rampant here. And I'm still playing the naive fool. "Isabella, look." "You're getting fat," Linda said casually, sitting down next to her friend. "For as long as I can remember, I've always been like a pole, but here my cheeks have grown, and I've even got a belly. You're eating sweets out of nervousness, aren't you?" "You think so?" Isabella clutched her stomach worriedly, and immediately raised her hands to her cheeks. "Not that, it's noticeable. Linda, I thought I was overdoing it. The scales are. Still broken at home. And it's not clear whether I've got fat or not. But the mirror was telling the truth. Yeah, I started taking pills, and I guess I had a reaction." "What kind of pills?" Linda squinted. "Oh, just some vitamins the doctor prescribed. I've been walking around and I've been getting headaches. She said I'm overworked. I need to boost my immune system. And the vitamins are specific, I guess." "Yeah, it happens." Linda smiled. "I thought you were stressed out and you were doing it. You haven't told me anything lately." "Yeah, I don't have time. I've got a lot of work to do." "I'm sorry, Linda." "Okay, guys, thanks for the coffee. I won't interrupt anymore." "Are you leaving already?" Linda was surprised. "We haven't talked in 5 minutes." "Yeah, it's time to go home. But Michael and I have also settled our big question." Isabella looked at Michael reproachfully. "It's not a good surprise, but we'll do it anyway. You don't know what we've cooked up anyway." When Isabella left, Linda thought for a long time about what to do. She wanted to teach her unfaithful husband and friend a lesson, but she couldn't think of anything. She had already decided for herself that she would not forgive them, at least not yet. With Michael, the only option was divorce. Linda was so tired of her gray and boring life that she just didn't want to drag it out any longer. The news of Isabella's pregnancy was the last straw in meeting Ethan. Linda hadn't considered a relationship with the man yet. Yes, she liked him a lot, but she didn't want to run into his arms after the first meeting. And what if he turned out to be a cheat or took advantage of her and immediately abandoned her? Such a scenario seemed extremely likely. But Linda was ready to take the risk. After all, she had nothing to lose. But to sleep together, even if they then immediately disperse, at least for one night she would be happy. But she didn't want to just silently apply. Mia would be back soon. How do I explain everything to her? She's a smart girl, she knows where babies come from, and she doesn't like Isabella. I didn't want the girl to overreact to her father's behavior. She loved him. And here. After dinner, Linda sat down on the sofa with her husband and pressed herself against his shoulder. "What are you doing?" Michael shuddered, not expecting his wife to show tenderness. "Michael," Linda said mysteriously. A plan had formed in her head. "There's something I need to tell you." "What is it?" Her husband became wary. "I don't even know how to begin. So tell me what you have to say. What's the point in dragging it out? We're not strangers." "Michael, tell me, do you love me?" "Here we go. Of course I love you. Where are you going to go? You're my wife. Do you love Mia?" What kind of stupid questions are these? She's my child. But then I want to make you happy. Linda's eyes sparkled. "Michael, I'm pregnant. You and I are going to have another baby." "What did you say?" Michael turned pale and even recoiled from his wife. "What? It's impossible?" "Why is it impossible? Aren't you excited? I always thought you wanted a son. Do you know the sex already? But we're not even sleeping together. When did this happen?" "I went to the doctor yesterday. To be honest, I didn't even think I was late because I was pregnant. I thought it was just my cycle being off." "Linda, we're not ready for a second baby right now. You know our money's tight." Michael was visibly nervous. He seemed to be calculating in his head how much it would cost him to support both children, his wife's and his mistress's. "I know this is going to sound crazy, but we have to make an interruption." "What termination, Michael?" Linda had tears in her eyes. "I'm 4 months pregnant. You can't do this." "Linda, I can't believe you didn't know before. I can't believe how irresponsible you've been. You know we don't have the money, we don't have the flat, and Mia is at that age. It's impossible. We have to think of something." "What are you going to do, Michael?" "I don't understand you, it's your child. You're suggesting I do a clandestine abortion, which will end up killing him and me. Why would it be clandestine? Why would we die? I'll arrange with a doctor I know, they'll do it at the hospital. They do abort at this term if it's life-threatening. But I'm not in any danger. It's just a formality, Linda." Misha jumped up from the sofa. "You don't understand what's going on." "No, Michael, no, I'm not doing any interruptions." "Fine, don't do it. But then we'll put the baby in an orphanage after it's born." "Are you out of your mind?" Linda screamed. "What orphanage? What is wrong with you, Michael? It's your baby." "I'm not so sure about that." What? Linda squinted. "What do you mean you're not sure?" "Linda, you and I don't have a close relationship. How could you get pregnant? Are you suspecting me or something? Shame on you. The timing fits. It was right after your birthday. Don't tell me you don't remember." "Oh yeah, you were drunk." "I remember everything." My husband grumbled. "How can you do that, just once?" "It's just that God wants us to have a baby. Don't you understand?" "I don't care." Michael clutched his head. "Don't you get it? A second child is a huge expense. I can support him on my own." Linda pressed her lips together. "What are you talking about? My salary is enough for me and him. Mia's on your budget. Or are you giving up on her too? Or do you have something or someone that takes the lion's share of your income?" "Michael, I know exactly how you're doing. And I'm not asking where you're spending a few thousand a month to bypass the family budget. And don't lie to me about business. Do you take cash withdrawals and put them somewhere else? I don't know, maybe you have a stash in your mattress and you prefer to save a little bit in notes. I'm not getting into this, but if you keep this up, I'm just going to leave. And you will never, ever, ever see your children again. That's it. I don't want to talk about this anymore. Linda, we need to calm down. You just shocked me with this news. I need to come to my senses. Where are you going? Linda followed her husband. I don't know. I need to go for a walk, mumbled Michael as he put on his trainers. Aha, Linda triumphed to herself. 100% to Isabella. I wonder what he'll say to her. It's a game changer. How will Michael get out of this? She hit the big one, the money. The funny thing is, Isabella's not going to let it go. She's going to get her alimony anyway. And she's going to make it look like such a scandal. And that bastard hasn't even mentioned a second child, even though he could have told me all about it. Well, I'm not really interested. The main thing is that he's twitching and Isabella's going to worry. Man. I feel sorry for her. Pregnant women shouldn't be nervous. I don't care. They weren't thinking about me. Why should I think about them now? In fact, I'd really like to see Ethan right now. Linda texted the man. He replied almost immediately, and Linda asked him to call her back. Is something wrong? Ethan asked worriedly. Ethan. Yes, something happened, Linda sighed. I think I'm getting a divorce. Oh my God, how can that be? Yesterday everything was not so categorical. Or did you make such a decision after talking to me? I didn't think I was capable of such a thing. No, you didn't. Linda laughed. It's different. Why don't we meet tonight? I'd love to. I'll be off in about 2 hours. Would that be convenient? Yeah, let's meet there then. Okay. Linda was standing outside the cafe when Ethan drove up. He flashed his headlights at her, and the woman got into his car. The man kissed her on the cheek, which sent a shiver through Linda's body. Well, what was so interesting? He asked. I found out by accident. Well, remember I told you about my friend Isabella? That's the one who persuaded you to start paying attention to other men? Yes, Linda nodded and took a deep breath. Anyway, she's pregnant with Michael's baby. What? Ethan was surprised. I thought you said they couldn't stand each other. That's what I mean. I do not know when and where it all happened. But she's already 5 months pregnant. And apparently after the housewarming party, they were having a nice chat in the kitchen. I guess that's when they hit it off. I don't know the details. I overheard them talking in the kitchen today. I also blamed myself for thinking about cheating. Isabella wants Michael to tell me everything, but he won't. The funny thing is, I told him this afternoon that I'm pregnant too. You should have seen the look on his face. He said all sorts of things to me. Then he went off to Isabella's, probably. He wasn't even back yet when I left. They're both nervous now. Are you pregnant? Ethan looked scared. No, of course not. Michael and I do not sleep at all. I convinced him that all this happened after his birthday, when he was drunk and doesn't remember anything. Oh, I see. So what, you're getting a divorce right away? What's the point of dragging this out? I've put up with this whole life together before, but now I'm sick of it. I'm betrayed by 2 people who are close to me at once. I feel sorry for Mia, but I'll explain everything to her. I just don't want her to hate her father. Now I'm thinking about how to get revenge on Isabella. Revenge is a dangerous thing, Ethan said thoughtfully. But I don't even want to take revenge, but to teach her a lesson. Now I feel betrayed and angry with her. But objectively, given her attitude toward the children, she has already punished herself. If I loved Michael, then yeah. Now I'm just angry. But I know that he will not abandon the child, and they will not have a relationship anyway. Michael's a decent guy, and he'd give his last penny. Even the way he reacted to my pregnancy today, it's only natural. I can only imagine how he was calculating the costs in his head. What's the best way to teach Isabella a lesson? I don't know. She loves money too, she loves it so much. But I can't do anything about it. And as far as I know, she doesn't have a man at the moment. She could at least try to steal him away. That's sneaky. You don't look like you're capable of anything like that. Listen, What if you and I put on a show? You say Isabella's into men and money. Let me meet her, start courting her. And when things get serious, you'll accidentally steal me away from her. Are you serious? Linda laughed. It's all a bit childish. It's quite serious. I'm attracted to women, but not every one will be to my liking. But what if Isabella does? She's beautiful. What then? Who would be the fool? Me again. I won't like her, even if she's 3 times beautiful. It's not about beauty. She's a rotten person. I'll never look at someone like that in my life. So you're worried about me getting stolen? I'm not worried. Linda blushed. It's just that I really like you and I'm sorry to give you away. Linda, you don't have to give me away. I'm not a thing, and I'm not in over my head. And I'll tell you right off the bat, as an adult to an adult, I really like you. That's where it's appropriate to say you like me. I'm not counting on anything, and I won't pressure you for anything, but I just want to help you as a friend. Can we be friends now? My life is boring, and a play like this will at least give me some fun. I don't know, Linda thought. I don't really like it. How do you see it? Isabella knows a trick when she sees one. Well, you can imagine it for me. I'm a good actor. My ex-wife taught me. She used to do this kind of tour. Okay, Linda waved her hand. You got it. When do we start? Tomorrow. Give me her address and a picture of her. I already have some ideas. Linda was looking at pictures on her phone and showed Ethan Isabella. Yes, she's beautiful, the man nodded. But you can tell she's a predator. I've always avoided her. Shall we get started? I'll visit her tomorrow. Michael was acting aggressively. Linda fought with him several times in the evening. Apparently, Isabella said something that really pissed off her husband. But there was no way for Linda to find out. She preferred to lock herself in Mia's room and not cross paths with her husband. She took the bouquet of peonies with her. On Sunday, Michael left for work, saying he was very busy. Linda called Ethan and asked if he would be implementing his plan today. The man promised to let her know later what had been done. Well, in the evening, they met again. Ethan looked cheerful. Yes, she's a real piece of work, your girlfriend, laughed the man. Tell me, come on, don't keep me waiting. Linda was impatient and curious. In general, took her today in his shop a luxurious bouquet of 101 roses. Women are usually crazy about those. You've seen them, right? They come in these beautiful buckets, red as blood. It seemed to me that Isabella liked them just the way they are. So I drove with all this stuff to her house. I waited for a long time, like 2 hours. I didn't even know if she'd come out or not. And then a miracle happened. I was distracted by the phone, and out of the corner of my eye, I noticed that a woman was coming out of the entrance. I looked closely, and it was her. Well, I immediately got out of the car with these flowers, caught up with her, and stuck her this bucket. She looked at me with her eyes bulging, standing there, not understanding what was going on. And I said to her, "Girl, I'm sorry, but I've got a problem here. My girlfriend left me. I brought her flowers, but she refused. She found someone else. And I don't want the flowers to go to waste. So I sat down to look for someone to give them to. And as luck would have it, only mothers with children up to their grandmothers. I wanted to give them to a beautiful girl. And then you come along. So I almost fell down. I realized at once that I was in the right place. Don't be impertinent. Take them." What about her? Linda was surprised. At first she was confused, of course, but then she squinted and took the flowers, saying I should take them home. And she thanked me. So I waited for her to come out again and persistently approached her. I said, "Girl, you'll forgive me, but I'm conquered. I've never seen such a beauty. Would you consider it an honor to meet her? I've got a reservation and I'm missing a table at the restaurant." So she said yes. I could tell she was hesitant, but something clicked. "And you've been to the restaurant?" Linda asked. "Yes, I took her there. We had dinner, had a very nice conversation. She even told me she was pregnant. She said her husband had left her and found someone else. Well, we mourned over our common grief, chatted about this and that. I asked her out again. I said, a baby's not a problem. I've always wanted one. And since I liked her so much, I'd be happy to continue getting to know her. And she said yes, of course. Naturally. She especially liked my car. I didn't drive my crossover, but another sporty one. Well, Isabella's eyes were burning. It's obvious that she had all the prospects in mind. So now it's just a matter of making her fall in love with him. Well, here, unlikely to succeed, Linda said disappointedly. Isabella has never fallen in love with anyone. She is a purely rational person. She is guided only by benefits. But she dreams of love. So let's give her that love. Well, I don't know how you'll do it, of course. Just trust me. With that, Ethan pulled Linda to him and kissed her. The woman's heart pounded desperately. What are you doing? She was embarrassed, but she didn't pull away. It's a sign that I'm serious, and that you have no doubts. In the meantime, I suggest we have dinner somewhere. Hopefully not Isabella, not your husband, we won't be caught. They chose a quiet, cozy restaurant. For the rest of the evening, Linda kept her eyes on Ethan. She felt everything inside her become airy and light. This had never happened to her before. Linda was working on her computer when her doorbell rang unexpectedly. Opening the door, the woman saw an extremely agitated friend. Isabella, what's wrong? Do you need to know? I can't hold it in any longer. Are you alone? Yeah, Michael's at work, and Mia's not flying until tonight. Come on in. Linda, I'm gone. Isabella rolled her eyes dreamily. Missing where? Linda squinted, realizing what she was getting at. I met a man last week, and it's like a fairy tale. He gave me a huge bouquet, like the most gorgeous thing ever. Oh, you've got something to be happy about. You've had a lifetime of flowers, but what's the use? No, Linda, this is different. He just walked up to me in the street and handed me these gorgeous flowers. I thought it was a joke at first, but he was persistent. He'd just broken up with his girlfriend. He asked me out on a date. I felt so bad. I said yes. I just fell head over heels in love with him. Name's Ethan. He's got his own business, sells flowers, drives a luxury car, owns his own house, and is divorced. But none of it matters. It's the first time I've ever felt like my man was destined to be my man. Yeah, okay, did you have a relationship with him before? No, that's the thing. He's so gallant. He doesn't push. He doesn't rush. He's so handsome. He's very interesting. I'd love to have him in my apartment. You should see how handsome he is. But I'm afraid of scaring him off. It's always like that with me. Once we sleep together, they run away, or it stays that way. I won't let that happen. And it's not about money at all. Believe it or not. I'm really happy for you. Linda hugged her friend, happy that Ethan had managed to fulfill his promise. Listen, can we come to your birthday party together? I really want to show him to you. Would Michael mind? Michael? Isabella was surprised. What's he got to do with it? Well, he doesn't like you very much, and now you're bringing a date. An extra mouth at the table. He's a cheapskate who counts every penny. Oh, that Michael of yours. If you want, my Ethan will organize a whole banquet for you. I can ask him. Don't. You'll really scare the man. A banquet is not a bouquet, especially not yours, but your friends. It's okay. I'm setting the table, not Michael. So come by, sure, I'd love to meet your Ethan. Great. Isabella kissed Linda on the cheek. We owe you an awesome gift. Isabella, don't charge him, please. What are you talking about? What's he got to do with it? I wasn't thinking he owes me a bouquet. It's no problem at all. I can buy my own presents. Besides, it was my quarterly bonus. Okay, you got me. Linda smiled. You're getting chubbier and chubbier, by the way. Are you taking all your vitamins? Oh, don't say anything. Isabella blushed. I'll be pregnant soon. Well, I'm off. I still have things to do. See you later. Lita locked the door behind her friend and laughed. She immediately dialed Ethan. Ethan. Linda laughed into the phone. That's it, the fish is hooked. Now Isabella was at my place. She swears that she fell in love with you to death. And everything's going smoothly and sweetly between you two. Linda, I hope you're not jealous. We never had a thing with her, and we never will. Yeah, I know. She told me all about it. She can't wait, but she's afraid she's going to miss out. She's holding on by her wits. I don't know what you're doing to her, but it's awesome. I'm expecting you two for your birthday this weekend. We'll do it then. I've already drawn up the divorce papers. All I have to do is hand them to Michael and put Isabella in her place. That's great. What are you doing today? Mia's coming back today. I'm going to meet her and I want to tell her everything so she doesn't get the shock of the holidays. Okay, I won't interrupt. I'll just keep working on your friend. By late afternoon, Linda was on edge. Michael took his time getting home from work, but that was to her advantage. She wanted to talk to her daughter alone. Mia was brought in by Oscar's parents. The girl flew into the flat, excited, flushed. She kissed her mother and chattered non-stop. When the girl had calmed down a little, Linda called her into the kitchen for tea. Mia, I need to tell you something, she began delicately. Mom, just don't start lecturing me. I'm not pregnant. I behaved properly and Oscar and I are fine. Thank you so much for helping me with the trip. I would have suffered so much. Emma Walsh has a thing for him too. And Oscar is such a wingman. Baby, this isn't about you, even though you had something to do with it. What is it? Don't tell me Dad's broke again, and we have to move again. No, I mean Dad's broke, but in a completely different matter. What's that? Mia's eyes popped out. Mia, you're an adult, and you're not being unreasonable. Please just accept it and don't despair. What's the matter? Did he file for divorce? No, Mia, I'm getting a divorce. What? My daughter's eyes widened. Why would you do that? I'm sick of him. I'll keep it quiet. Anyway, Aunt Isabella's pregnant with Michael's baby, and they're keeping it from me. And I told your dad I was pregnant too, but it's not true. I just wanted to annoy him. Now he's hardly ever home. Of course he does, 2 pregnant women. Mum, we have to do something. I'm already doing something. The issue with Dad is settled. I'm filing for divorce. I can put up with a lot of things, but not this hypocrisy. You can talk to him any way you want. I won't interfere. After all, what happened is between me and him. It has nothing to do with you. And I'm asking you to stay out of it. If you come back from the divorce and you're back from him, he'll be devastated. Michael is a good man and a good father. I just don't want to live with him anymore. Wait, you're just giving him to Aunt Isabella. What about love? What love, Mia? Linda sighed. We never had any, just routine and comfort. Let him live as he likes. Isabella doesn't need him, but we can't let her get away with it. Well, darling, don't worry. The plan to punish her is already in motion. Let's hear more about it. Mia's moving in closer. What plan? Mia, I met a man. Linda's blushing deep red. A man. Mum, you're all red. Don't tell me you're in love. I guess I am. Linda smiled. Who's the man? His name is Ethan. Very nice. You'll see him on Saturday. Is he coming here? Mia collapsed. Yes, but you're going to have to play along with me. You see, Ethan was the one who figured out how to teach Isabella a lesson. Now he's doing everything he can to make her fall in love with him, and he's succeeding. Isabella came running this morning to tell me she's in love. Okay, I don't get it. If they're in love and you like him, how is that even possible? It's an act, Mia. Linda patted her daughter on the head and told her her plan. Well, Mum, I didn't expect this from you. Look, don't be sorry. But Dad, I don't even know how he's going to act. He can do what he wants to do. I don't care anymore. When Michael returned home from work, his daughter showed nothing of herself. She was a little more reserved with her father. There weren't many guests. Linda set the table, put on a beautiful dress. Mia hung balloons and tinsel everywhere. Michael tried to pretend that he was happy with what was going on, but from time to time he glanced at his wife, trying to see her protruding belly. Naturally, he saw nothing, which made him even angrier. Finally, the doorbell rang. It was Isabella. Ethan stayed behind, holding a huge bouquet of peonies. Here we are. Isabella was glowing with happiness. Meet Ethan, the man of my dreams. Michael stood red as a cancer and looked hatefully at Isabella, at her companion, and at the flowers. But Linda quickly tried to ease the tension and invited everyone to the table. Mia watched Ethan with interest, occasionally glancing at her mother, and smiled meaningfully. It was obvious that her daughter liked the man. When the fun was in full swing, Linda noticed that neither Isabella nor her husband were at the table. She approached Ethan and invited him out on the balcony to admire the view. "It looks like everything is going according to plan." Ethan smiled. "I saw Isabella go to the bathroom and Michael followed her, and they've been gone for about 10 minutes. Apparently they're working things out. All we have to do is wait. I warned Mia, and most of the guests are gone. The ones that are left aren't really interested in our marital bliss. So can I kiss you?" Linda smiled, and without waiting for her consent, he gently took her chin and pulled her to him. Linda didn't know how long the kiss lasted, but it seemed infinitely long. She felt even more pleasure at the anticipation of being caught like this right now. "Linda." Michael almost shouted. "What are you doing?" Isabella's voice broke into a shriek. "We." The woman looked closely at her husband and friend, pulling away from Ethan's lips but remaining in his arms. "Kissing, can't you see?" "We can see that." Michael was outraged. "I'm asking what the hell is going on here. And I'm wondering." Isabella glared at Ethan and her friend. "How can I explain it to you?" Ethan began confused. "Love is happening here. What else can you call it on sight?" "Yes," Linda smiled. "I would call it that too." "No, you've got a nerve." Michael continued to shout. "Not only are you doing this, but you're making fun of us." "Linda, are you ashamed to kiss the first guy you see in the marital home? And you, honorable man, are you so drunk that you mistook your woman for mine?" "No, sir," Ethan mocked him. "You confused your woman with mine." "What are you talking about?" Michael shouted, pulling away from Isabella, who was ready to lunge at the embracing couple. "About what's under Isabella's breasts." Linda squinted at him. "Who exactly?" Isabella and Michael looked at each other. The woman went dramatically pale and the man blushed even more. "Did you know everything?" Isabella asked her friend, pressing her lips together. "Yes," she nodded. "For a couple of weeks now. You came in the morning and I overheard everything." "But why, then? Didn't you charge me with anything?" "What would I say and what would I hear in return? I wanted you to realize what a despicable thing I'd done. But you never even loved Michael." "Yeah, but he's still my husband, and you had no right to use him." "Wait a minute," Michael interjected. "You mean Linda was aware of everything and acted so calmly? And now what, like your baby?" "There is no baby, Michael," Linda replied. "I made the whole thing up to see how you'd behave. And you, believe me, proved that I made the right decision from the beginning." "The right decision?" "I questioned my husband." "Yes, we're divorcing you. All the documents are ready. I'll tell you right away that with Mia, you see, I will not interfere. She is already aware of everything and will live then with me, then with you. Thank your daughter for not hating you after all this." "Divorce?" Michael's eyes widened. "Yeah, what did you want?" "I don't want to live with you anymore. I realize you're not going to be so comfortable right now." Linda sneered. "But it's better for everyone." "All right. Well, make it clear to me, what does Ethan have to do with this?" "Linda, even the whole situation does not give you the right to hang on my man's neck. Are you Ethan? Are you out of your mind?" "It's nothing personal." Linda asked me to help her. "Wait," Isabella wrinkled her forehead. "You mean you two know each other?" "Well, yes," nodded Ethan. "And not just acquainted. I can already say with certainty that I love this woman." The blood rushed to Isabella's face. She finally realized what had really happened. Tears spurted from her eyes. She pushed Michael away and ran away. Not a minute later, the front door slammed. Michael remained standing in the doorway. Linda walked past, leading Ethan by the hand. Mia looked on in bewilderment at all that was going on in the company of a couple of the remaining guests. "You've got to be kidding me," was all her daughter said. Linda pressed and pressed the bell, but no one came to the door. Then the woman started pounding on the door with her fist, a dark suspicion creeping in. Finally, something inside clicked and the door opened. "Why did you come?" Isabella asked in a tired voice. She had lost a lot of weight, but under her pink bodysuit she could see a well-shaped belly. "Isabella, I need to talk to you." Linda smiled guiltily. She hadn't spoken to her friend for 3 months since her birthday. "Well, come in now that you're here." Isabella moved aside, letting her guest inside. Isabella. Linda sighed heavily and looked her friend straight in the eye. I came to apologize. For what? The woman grinned. For that play. I don't care. It was my own fault. I should be the one apologizing to you. Your husband made a baby for me. How's he doing, by the way? Not so good, to be honest. I haven't seen him since the divorce. Mia sleeps over at Michael's every day. Thanks to her. Without his daughter, he'd be out of his mind. How's he treating you? Well, he puts money on my card. But I'm going back. I don't want anything from him. I make a good living myself. I decided, as you advised, to have a child for myself. I'm being punished by karma for my consumerist attitude to life. The baby, you know, Linda, I didn't want it at first. I thought I'd get rid of it. And then I used it to manipulate Michael. And then I met Ethan, and it was like I had no more real feelings. It changed everything in my head. How is he, by the way? Good, he gave you flowers, but I left them in the car. I didn't know if you'd open them or not. I'll get them. Don't. Isabella smiled faintly. Isabella, it's from the heart. We collected the bouquet especially for you. No, you don't understand, laughed her friend. I'm allergic. Even indoor plants all moved to my dad. I don't want to see the baby. Really? Linda was surprised. You poor thing. Linda held her friend tightly and felt her shaking with sobs. What are you doing? Questioned Lyda. How not to cry. Isabella sobbed. I did not think that you are such a kind aunt. Well, how can such a trash like me forgive and even hug here to stand? And don't forget I'm hormonal. And both women laughed. Ira, when's the baby due? Linda asked, munching on the cake that her friend had baked in the morning. It's delicious. I never realized you were such a good cook. Thank you, Isabella smiled. While I'm at home, I'm learning. And how will the baby look at me later? Yes, in 3 weeks the doctor says so. Oh, I'm so scared. What's there to be afraid of? 1 million women give birth, and you're no worse. But I'm old. Have you even heard that the government wants to raise the age of old age to 36? So you don't even fall into that category. What are you talking about? Isabella looked at Linda suspiciously. Yes, it's too early to say, but the woman hesitated. I haven't even told Ethan anything yet. But I took a test this morning and I got 2 stripes. Oh, come on. Wow, you guys are fast. You've only known each other for a little while. How long? 4 months. Yeah, I know it's not that long. But we're adults. We don't have time to make mistakes, and look. I can feel myself drawn to him. And he's attracted to me. You told me yourself that without love a woman is unhappy. And now I feel loved and needed and wanted. I really had no idea it could be like this. What I saw with Michael and before him, all the men before him weren't serious. And then I was struck by lightning. Yeah, I went through something like that with Ethan myself. It's a different kind of energy. I can't imagine how his ex-wife could pass up such happiness for some guy in Dubai. Lucky you, baby. Of course I'm jealous. I can't argue with that. There's still something about Ethan. No, it's not love, of course. But I had a huge crush on him. I've never felt anything like it either. You know, I'm done now, and I'm done now. And I'm done. I've got a lot more feelings to experience now. I know what it's like to be a mother, but soon I'll really understand. I'm happy for you, mate. Lita kissed her friend on the forehead. And anyway, it doesn't matter what happened there. Let's be optimistic about the future. By the way, your son will be my Mia's brother. Do you realize that? Shit. You do, don't you? Isabella was surprised. I hadn't even thought of that. So we're related now? Yes, we are. Linda laughed. And Mia will not be laughing now, 2 brothers to bring up at once. Mia's going to be so happy she's going to whistle away. You and I can manage on our own. All right, Isabella, I'll go. I'm going to stop by the gynecologist to make sure the test is accurate. And then I'll let Ethan know. Let me know too. Don't forget. I love you, Linda. You're the best woman in the world. And I love you. I don't care what happened. Linda sat in the dark kitchen of Ethan's city flat. They usually went to the country house for the weekend. It was more convenient to live here to get to school faster. Although the girl often stayed at her father's house, but Linda still thought of her first and foremost. Ethan didn't mind. He and Mia quickly found a common language. The girl even showed an active interest in floristry and often came to the central shop fan to learn this craft. Linda clutched tightly in her hands a sheet of paper with a picture attached to it. When the light came on in the hallway, the woman flinched. Ethan also flinched when he entered the kitchen, turned on the light, and saw his woman sitting in a chair. "Linda," he said, pretending to hold his heart. "Why are you sitting in the dark? Why are you home anyway? Mia said you two were going out tonight." Mia and Oscar went on a bike ride. Oh, for a bike ride. They're closing out the season. I went on a business trip and I'm back now. Your own thing? What's that, I wonder? Ethan squinted. And it does not explain sitting in the dark. What is this paper you have? And this, Linda caught up. Ethan, they told me to give it to you. Jesus, Linda, why is the tone so mournful? You scare me? Who told to give? Stork. What kind of name is that? I've never heard it before. And you look at it, you'll recognize it immediately. Lita handed the man the ultrasound results. He ran the text several times with his eyes, twirled the image, and looked silently at Linda. Nothing to say? Linda opened her eyes. I can't read handwriting. Ethan blushed. It's from the hospital, I get it. An X-ray or something. Jesus, are you serious? Linda laughed. X-ray. Vanya, I'm pregnant. You and I are going to have a baby. I've heard that somewhere before. Michael was also played by you. Just so you know, there's nothing to avenge. You're a fool. Lita gently stroked the man on the head. Ethan, I'm serious. You and I will have a child. You see, all somehow quickly so, but it's true. The man's eyes lit up. Really? God, baby, yes, this is the best news of my life. I couldn't even dream of this. Ethan picked Linda up in his arms and started kissing her cheeks, forehead, and eyes everywhere. Linda laughed and tried to pull away. What kind of fun is going on here? Came Mia's voice. Ethan and Linda froze and looked at each other. Well, you tell me, winked the man. Linda nodded. Ethan gently lowered her to the floor. Linda walked over to Mia and looked into her eyes. Baby, just don't make a scene, the mother said seriously. I know that in families there is competition between children, and the older ones are often jealous of the younger ones. Well, it shouldn't be like that in ours. Mom, are you all right? Mia touched her mother's forehead to check for a fever. What older kids, what younger kids? I'm kind of on my own. Aunt Isabella's having my half-brother soon, though. Is that what you mean? Almost. Mother laughed. Aunt Isabella has a brother and I have a sister. Well, perhaps it's too young to tell the sex, but somehow I think it will be a girl. Mom, Mia's starting to get the message. Are you saying you're having a baby? Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. No way. Mia shook her head. And you are good, Ethan. What do you mean? You're going to put two babies on me at once? What traitors? Mia laughed loudly. Linda laughed, and then Ethan laughed, too.
Hi. Someone tapped her just below her back. At that moment, she was standing in the store, picking out groceries. Hi, she turned slightly, not even noticing who was saying hello to her. The young man walked past. Selena continued to pick out her groceries. So if I want to make a pizza, I need to buy more sausage and cheese. She spoke out loud so as not to forget anything. And when all the things she needed were stacked in the basket, she went to the juice shelf. At that moment, she wondered who it was that could behave so impudently. Look back, there was no one around. She went into another hall. She saw that young man. She noticed him because he was wearing a bright orange jacket, but she didn't recognize him. The interest was already so strong that Selena decided to approach him. He was looking at various cans of beer, apparently wanting to heat up his evening. When the girl got close to him, she couldn't believe her eyes. It was Alexander. Alexander was her neighbor. For a few minutes, Selena just stood there looking at him, a smile on her face. Probably he felt that look, turned around. Alexander, hello, she said cheerfully. I thought we already said hello. He did not understand. Yes, when? She was happy as if she had met a man on a desert island. Like when 2 minutes ago I approached you. He continued to make his choice. Alexander, Alexander, I didn't recognize you. I thought who could touch me so brazenly, Selena kept saying. And what, you recognize who? He was indifferent. Well, what are you like? You're not happy. How many years we haven't seen you? A lot. She was ready to throw the basket and just disgorge him. Why are you so happy? He was still serious. Oh my gosh. But if you don't want to socialize, I'll go. But know that I was very happy to see you. She wanted to turn around, but he stopped her. Where to? He held her hand. To the checkout, she answered calmly, realizing that time had passed. And now this was not the man she had once known. Wait a minute, what's your offense? He looked at her the way he had once looked at her before. Selena remembered everything. She just couldn't help but smile. This was Alexander, the one she had so much in common with. They went to the register together, paid, and left the store. What are you doing here? He asked her. I live, she answered, not knowing what else to say. You were leaving, he wondered. She had left and come back. Celine didn't know if she was doing the right thing standing there talking to him. Okay, I'm sorry for reacting to your joy like that, but I'm glad to see you too, he told her. And you know what? Let's go visit me. Selena felt herself starting to get flirty with him. And let's go, he said calmly. They walked together to her house. He took the package from her hands. What was going on inside her at that moment cannot be described in words. Some kind of awe, tenderness, and at the same time, everything was seething, incomprehensible. They came to the entrance. She opened the door, went up to the floor, entered the apartment. Oh, what's going on here? He was immediately surprised to see various construction materials in the corridor, broken doors, plastered walls. Don't mind me. I've been working on it for a couple of months. I can't finish it, she said. If you lived with me, it wouldn't be like this, he said, and shook his head. Would it have been done already? She said with a grin. Of course, I'm a man. I have hands and they grow from the right place. Without taking off his shoes, he followed her into the kitchen. Here, only here is a place where you can sit, and here I sleep. She pointed to the bed, which stood in the corner. And when it's over, he asked. I don't know, there's still a lot of small work to do, Selena sighed, because she was really tired of living like this. Like what? He asked. The baseboards need tearing off, she said. I could do it right now, but unfortunately, there were no tools in Selena's house. Alexander promised he would come the next day and do it. That was very nice to hear because it was unknown when the workers would arrive. While he walked around the apartment and looked at everything that was there, Selena put the pizza in the oven as she wanted. There were glasses on the table, and she pulled out the wine. Are you trying to get me drunk on wine? He asked. Why? She looked surprised. No, I have my own. He took a beer out of the bag. Well, as you wish, she shrugged and sat down at the table. And what smells so good? Asked the guest. I put the pizza in the oven. She looked through the glass. You are also a good hostess, he told her. Alexander, enough, let's talk about who, where, what, she told him. As I lived here, so I live and work. What else to say? He looked at her. This look gave Selena goosebumps. What about your wife, your kids? She asked him. You remember Amy? She was divorced. He stopped talking and lowered his eyes. Was it a tough divorce? She asked him. No, he didn't say anything. Did she not let him see the baby? Selena remembered that when they were married, Amy was already pregnant. Don't ask about that, he asked. Okay, the girl thought, it's not that simple. She opened the oven, checking to see if the pizza was burnt. At that moment, Alexander stood up, walked over to her, took her hand. What are you doing? She turned to him, smiling. Yes, Amy and I divorced a long time ago. And as you know, we had a daughter, but she died recently. He held Selena's hands, lowered his head and did not look at her. Oh, I'm so sorry, said the girl. And why? She looked up at him. Crashed her car. At this point, a stingy male tear rolled down his cheek. Shit, Alexander. She hugged him. How many years have passed? You can imagine that when they first met, they were so few years old, and now they sat down at the table again, not opposite each other, but next to each other. I always remembered you. He put his hand on her knee. And she deliberately did not turn to him, so as not to look him in the eye. When I saw you in the store, I wanted to come over. He took his glass. And before, that did not want to approach, laughed the girl. I have not seen you before. He put his head on her shoulder and gently touched her cheek with his lips. Alexander, don't, she pulled away from him. Why? He asked quietly in her ear. I'm afraid of you, she honestly admitted. What are you surprised, Alexander? No, I'm not afraid of you physically, I'm afraid of you morally. You're about to lure me again and then dump me. She knew him very well. Celine, he pulled her against him the way he had done before. She gasped at this tenderness, but she couldn't do anything because there really was some fear inside. You do realize, don't you, that this love of ours will never end. It was once and for life, he whispered in her ear. Alexander, we are adults. We should understand everything. She turned to him. At that moment, he started kissing her, and she couldn't resist. She answered his kiss. I can't live without you, he told her. And I don't believe you, she answered. They were lying in bed together. The pizza was getting cold on the table. Wine and beer were still poured in glasses. They didn't need anything but themselves right now. And you're still the same, he told her. And you're not, she turned away, now lying back and smiling. Have you gotten old? Alexander asked. Yeah, she laughed and turned to him. What was happening between them now could not be described in words. It was already just such a connection, which is inexplicable and intangible. Selena, she woke up to whispers in the morning. Alexander, did you and I fall asleep? She said in a sleepy voice without opening her eyes. I think we were. He kissed her. Today there was no need to go anywhere, so the girl was in no hurry. Why aren't you going home? She asked him. I don't want to, he answered her. Why don't you want to? She was lying there with her eyes closed, pressed against him. I don't want to let you go. He pressed her even tighter against him. Alexander, is it all true? Selena didn't believe it could be. What do you think? He whispered in her ear. I don't know. She really didn't know that. When it was already lunchtime, they had to get up, if only to have coffee. Do you want some? She pointed to the can. Yep, Alexander smiled. 1.5 spoonfuls of coffee and the same amount of sugar. She asked him, do you remember? He stretched out. Of course, how could I forget? She poured the coffee into the mug. The sugar was more difficult because it was refined sugar. She added 1 cube, but with the second she had to labor to somehow saw half off with a knife. What are you doing there? He saw Selena tense up. Half sugar, she laughed and showed him the uneven lump. Well, you're kidding. You could have thrown in 2 or 1 would have sufficed. He got off the bed and walked over to her, hugging her from behind. I want to make you feel good, she said honestly. They heated up last night's pizza and sat down at the table, drinking coffee. Selena went to wash her face. Alexander followed her. Can I have a moment of privacy? She turned to him. No, again he put his arms around her and pulled her against him. I don't want to let you go for a minute. Now she pushed him out the door. After she washed her face, came and sat down next to him, she saw that Alexander was pensive. What are you thinking? She pressed against his cheek. About you? He raised his eyes. And what? She stopped talking. Nothing, he told her, stood up, went to the stove, poured water into his mug again. The kettle was probably already cold. She went there too, to help him. Selena, are you alone? He asked her because he had been thinking about it since yesterday. No, she answered seriously. I knew it. He put the kettle back on the stove. Do you know with whom? Her lips smiled slightly. I don't want to know. Please don't say. Alexander waved his head and went to the table. Fool, of course. I'm now alone, but with you. She kissed him on the cheek. Why are you scaring me so much? He seemed to exhale. Is that what you've been thinking about all morning today? She wanted to hug the man. Maybe, he answered. No, I'm alone, she thought for a moment. But you said you're not now. He put his arms around her, pulled her to him, and started kissing her again. They spent the rest of the day in bed, and when it was already deep into the night, Alexander burrowed into her hair and said he had to leave. Wait at least until morning, she pleaded. I have to go to work in the morning, so I need to sleep and be awake, and I can't do that with you. He got up and started to get dressed. She looked at this man and realized that he was right when he talked about love. Will you come? She asked. What do you think? He stopped, looked at her and froze for a few seconds. I think not. She didn't even think twice when she answered that question. I don't promise that tomorrow or the day after tomorrow because it's a lot of work and I'm busy practically 24 hours a day, but closer to the weekend for sure. He leaned in, kissing her. At that moment, Selena stood up and followed him out into the hallway. I'll be waiting. She ran her hand over his face. I'll be there, he whispered to her. After that, he took his jacket and walked out of the door. The girl went to take a shower. Before, when she saw it in movies or heard someone singing in the shower, she'd always laughed at it. But today, she was singing by herself. She didn't care that the neighbors might hear it and think something of her. That when she went out, she just fell on her bed, lay there, staring at the ceiling, thinking and remembering about Alexander, about her beloved. Could it all happen again because they say you can't step in the same river twice, she told herself. She was so happy. She wanted to sing, to smile, to go outside, to give something to someone. She closed her eyes. Selena was just happy in that moment. But when Friday came, Alexander was not there. The girl thought that maybe he meant Saturday when he said he would come closer to the weekend. For some reason, now it occurred to her that they hadn't even exchanged phone numbers, and she could have dialed him now. Maybe it was for the best, she said aloud, waved her hand and stopped waiting for him. After all, it had happened more than once. Selena was in 9th grade at the time. At that time, it was such a happy time. Girls 15 years old, boys, discos, meetings, parties. She didn't think about anything, just lived her happy girl life. What's that rumbling noise? Once asked her mother when she heard that from the stairwell, loud voices and blows. I don't know, replied her daughter. Selena, well, look through the peephole, her mom told her. It looks like someone is moving in. She looked there. That's it. Our quiet life is over. Now the neighbors will come and it will begin, smiled the woman. The apartment next door had been empty for a long time, and since the house was very audible, it was clear that the neighbors would not sit in silence. They would start talking again. Music, it was already checked when the previous tenants lived here. Mom, can I go get some bread? Selena told her. There's bread. She looked at her. Well, for milk or whatever else is necessary, just to the store. I couldn't wait for the girl to leave the apartment and see who will live in the next apartment. I see, for money, buy some vegetables and something for yourself. Her mother was not stupid and understood what the girl needed. Selena left the apartment. At that moment, 2 young guys were dragging a sofa. Hello, are you guys moving into this apartment? Selena pointed to the door. Yep, nodded one of them with his head. They stopped on the steps to take a break. I see, so we'll be neighbors, she said cheerfully. She couldn't get through because all the space was taken up by the couch. I'm Alexander, and this is my friend John, said one of the guys. He was smiling. And I'm Selena, she said. After the young men dragged the couch in, Selena went downstairs. She quickly went to the store. When she returned, she saw that the car wasn't fully unloaded yet and the guys were gone. She purposely slowed her gait to wait for them to come out of the driveway. And there they were. Wow, how much stuff you have. She pointed at the car. Yes, there's some. Alexander was still as cheerful as ever. Well, goodbye, she smiled, waved her hand and went into the entrance. So, who's coming in? Her mother met her in the hallway. Some young guy. Selena shrugged her shoulders as if she didn't care. She went to her room. She couldn't wait to go out tonight and tell her friends. In the kitchen, her mother cooked something, and then she was going to leave. Where are you going? The girl asked her. I'm going to throw out the trash in Leslie, she said about her friend who lived in the next house. All right, let me go out soon too, her daughter told her. Her mother left and Selena started putting on her makeup and getting ready to meet her friends. She hadn't had a chance to leave yet when her mother came back. Why are you looking at me like that? Her daughter asked her. What did you tell me today? Some young guy's coming over. He's young to me, but to you he's old. She took off her shoes. How old is he? The girl was indignant. Well, about 10 years older than you for sure. The mother went into the room. Selena at this moment. Selena jumped out of the apartment. When she met with her girlfriend, she spent the whole evening telling her about Alexander, what he was like, that he was going to live near her now. You should have seen him, she said with a gasp to her friend. Oh, Selena, enough with your neighbor, Hannah told her, because she was not interested. After that, No matter how many times Selena went to the store, the street, or anywhere else, she never once met Alexander. It wasn't that it was a shame, but she wouldn't have minded seeing him. "Is your mother going to let you go to the disco tonight?" Hannah asked. "Why such questions? Has she ever not let me go?" Selena didn't understand. "Well, no, just the day before yesterday we came late. You said she was swearing," shrugged the girl. "I think it'll be fine." Selena was always cheerful and upbeat. "That's it, then we'll meet there as well." They went home after school. In the evening, as on other weekends, they met, chatted a little, and went to the disco. There they danced, both fast and slow dances. And so, when everyone gathered in the foyer to hang out some more after the disco, a guy approached Hannah. Selena realized that today they would go out not together with her friend, but with three of them and with her new boyfriend. The girl was a little hurt that she would be alone, but no one was thinking about that right now. When they came out, Hannah gave all her attention to the young man. She was talking to him. They were making out, kissing, laughing, as if Selena wasn't even with them. "Okay, I'm going home," she said. "No offense," Hannah turned to her. No, I'm not." Even though it wasn't true, she couldn't say it any other way. Through the deserted streets, Celine walked alone, and just as she turned into her yard, she saw a familiar figure. It was Alexander, but they weren't so familiar with him that she could so easily approach him, say something. To be honest, she couldn't even say hello to him because she was shy. Alexander at that moment also noticed his neighbor. "Selena," he shouted at her. "Yes," turned the girl, cheeks burning. Inside, everything was shaking. She could not even say a word because she was afraid that her voice would shake. "Are you going home?" he asked her. "Yes," she said again, and thought to herself that she could have said something else. "Do you want to go for a little walk?" Alexander asked. Come on, she couldn't believe this was really happening. She'd been looking for a meeting with him for so long. And now, not only had they met, but he called her for a walk. "Let's go sit on the bench over there." When they reached the park, he showed her. "Let's go." Today, she was willing to do anything just to be near him. Alexander had his guitar with him. He set it next to a bench. They sat down. The guy began to ask what, how, where she studied, how long she had been living in this apartment, some common phrases. "Do you sing?" she asked him off key. Well, as you can see, he looked at the guitar. And now, she looked at him and immediately turned away because she was shy. "Do you want me to sing to you?" he asked her. "If you want." She still didn't look up. Alexander took the guitar. He started to sing some song. And as it happens with all young lovers, all the words in the song Selena transferred to herself. And Alexander tried, pulling something about love, about unhappy love. "Beautiful," Selena said when he finished. "Do you want me to sing more?" he asked her. "I do," she answered honestly, and it was true. The guy started singing a song that said that he had been alone for so long, hadn't met the one and only one he would love yet. And then recently a girl appeared on the horizon. When he looked into her eyes, he realized that she was his in everything. And of course, Selena thought the guy in the song was Alexander and the girl was her. The girl just sat there and smiled. It was fall outside, with yellow leaves on the ground. And now here, late at night, in the park, where there was no one, these leaves, the bench, Alexander with a guitar, everything was so Poltigny. "Why are you so mysterious?" he asked. "No, I'm fine." She got even more embarrassed. Alexander moved closer, put his hand on her waist. At that moment, she turned around and he kissed her. Selena had kissed guys before, but never like he did now. "You're beautiful," he told her. "So are you," she told him, and then thought she must have said something stupid. "Do you want me to sing to you some more?" He realized that the girl was melting from his songs and from everything that was going on. "Aha," she nodded, and he sang again and again about love. "You're mine forever. I'll never leave you." Selena heard the words of the song, and then they were kissing again. "Should we go home?" she asked him when it was very late. The girl realized that her mother would scold her at home. "Let's go," he laughed. "Why are you laughing?" She didn't understand. Now anyone else would have offered to see her off, but realized that we live with you in adjacent apartments. And even if I didn't want to, I'd have to walk you out. He smiled again. "Yeah, funny, but..." She stopped talking. She wanted to say that if her mother saw them together, she probably wouldn't be happy, and then decided not to say it out loud. Alexander must have understood everything, because he didn't ask again. That evening they walked home. He held her hand. Everything was just as Selena had imagined she would someday have with a young man. They reached the driveway. He drew her to him, kissed her once more. "Will we meet up with you again?" he asked her. "Probably, but it still depends on you." She looked up at him. "Okay, I'll say it wrong then," he smiled. "Tomorrow you and I will meet here in the courtyard in the evening." He spoke so convincingly that the girl believed him. Good, and that was all the girl needed for her 15-year-old happiness. She walked into the house, took off her shoes, and her mom came out of the room. "Were you out with the neighbor?" she asked the girl. "Why do you think so?" Did not understand the daughter, how mom guessed. "Well, do I look like a fool? You came in and slammed the door at him," she mouthed. "And why can't we come from somewhere together, walk up the stairs, and go into our own apartment?" Selena didn't understand. "Oh, coincidences like that rarely happen," her mother told her, and went to her room. Selena didn't argue with her, went to her room. She lay down on the couch, hugged her favorite bear, and began to remember how tonight had gone. She realized that her parents would never let her date Alexander while she was in school. She had paid attention to him once when he was moving in, so that's why her mother was thinking about it now. Tonight, she didn't even go to wash her face. She fell asleep like that. She had to go to school in the morning, and she was getting ready in the evening. And even though the girls were calling to go out, Selena didn't go anywhere. She went out to the courtyard and sat at a table. Selena waited for Alexander, for he had told her yesterday that they would meet here in the evening. Time went by very slowly. It was 8:00 p.m., 9:00 p.m., and he was still gone. "Why are you sitting here?" She heard the voice of her mother, who came out of the entrance. "Nothing, just so I can't sit here." She was afraid that her mom would think something wrong. "Well, usually you and the girls go out somewhere, but today you settled right in the yard." Her mother suspected something again. "Hannah told us all to come over tonight, but she's staying late," she lied. "Okay." The mother looked at her one more time and went on her way. Alexander still hadn't come. "I see." She got up from the bench and headed for her entrance. She could have gone to where their company was meeting, but for some reason Selena didn't feel like it today, so she just walked home. She hadn't seen or heard from him for 3 days. And then when she got home from school, she saw him at the same table where she had waited for him a few days ago. "Selena, hi." He walked up to her. "Hi." She didn't want to show him she was offended or anything else she was thinking. "I'm sorry I didn't come over then." He took her hand. "Yeah, it's okay," she replied simply. "Shall we go for a walk?" he asked. Right now, she realized it's still another day. "If you don't want to, we can tonight." He looked into her eyes. "No, let's go right now," she agreed, because she thought if he said tonight, then he might not come again. And again they walked. Alexander said something, pressed her to him, kissed her, and Selena just melted from his embrace. "Come to me on Friday," he told her. "What's going to happen?" She wanted to know. "My friends and I will get together. Sit. I'll introduce them to you," he began to tell her. Meanwhile, the girl was thinking about how she would leave her apartment and go into his. But that was not the most important thing, so she decided to think about it later. "What's on your mind?" he asked her. "No, it was just that." Now she looked at him. For some reason, she felt like telling him about her mom not welcoming their connection at all. "But I can see that something is bothering you." He put his arm around her shoulders. The day you moved in, I saw you. I fell in love immediately," Selena began to say, and Alexander laughed. "That's your childish maximalism talking in you," he told her. "Well, let it be so. So when I saw you, then looked for a long time for meetings. My mother noticed all this, and now," she stopped. "And now she's telling you that I'm too old for you and you're still little and you can't come to me, right?" He took her face in his hands and kissed her. "Yes," she nodded, "but we'll figure something out." Alexander was sure of it. Of course, right now it seemed to the girl that she was willing to roll mountains for this man. At school, when she started to tell Hannah about her neighbor, she didn't even want to listen because it seemed that she didn't believe her friend. It turned out that she couldn't consult with her mom. Her friend didn't listen to her. She was on her own. On Friday, when she came from school, she hoped that her mother would not come until the evening, and her father never paid attention to where and when she went. but her mother did not live up to her expectations. "Okay, Mom, I'm off," she shouted from the hallway and left the apartment. Selena started downstairs, and with her back, she felt her mother's burning gaze through the peephole. The girl purposely tapped her heels louder so that she could hear that her daughter had definitely left the entrance. Downstairs, the girl slammed the door hard and sat down on the bench. She sat there for about 10 or 15 minutes, then very quietly opened the door, took off her heels, went up to her floor, and scratched at Alexander's door. "Ooh," he opened the door. "Quiet." She put her finger to her lips. "Ah, got it," he said in a whisper. Selena went in and just as quietly closed the door. Alexander led her into the room where her friends were already sitting around the table. He introduced her to everyone, and then they started drinking and eating. The guitar sounded many times that evening. Not only Alexander sang, his friends picked up. It was interesting and fun. Now it was necessary to go home, and so Selena also quietly went out as she came in, went down to the street, after immediately slamming the driveway door and loudly went upstairs. "Have you been to the neighbor's house today?" Her mother asked her from the doorstep. "Mom, are you awake?" Was very surprising to the girl because it was not the first time she went out and came back late. But before, her mother did not suspect her of anything and certainly never met her in the middle of the night. "I'm waiting for you in the corridor," stood the woman with her arms at her sides and looked at her daughter. "Well, here I am." Celine stared at her point blank. "Give me your hand," her mother said to her. Why? She didn't understand. Her mother took her hand in her own while looking Selena in the eye. "Where have you been?" she asked her again. "Mom, what's wrong, tell me." The girl was tired of standing there. "Your hands are warm, even if you were coming from Hannah or from where you were sitting. It's not the month of May outside. Your hands wouldn't be so warm," the woman told her. What kind of interrogation? What kind of innuendo? Maybe they were in my pockets. Selena didn't know what else to say. She didn't even think her mother would touch her hands or anything like that. "Daughter, he's much older than you. If you start dating him, he'll just ruin your life," she told her. "Mom, let me handle this. If I start dating him, you'll be the first to know," she told her and went to her room. She'll sort it out herself. Shook her mother's head and went to bed. The next day, when Selena was coming back from school, she saw Leslie on the bench at the entrance. "Hi," she walked up to her. "Hi," Hannah told her. This girl was also a few years older than Selena. She was friends with Tom, who lived in the same house as Selena's grandmother. "What are you doing here?" the girl asked her. "Living," Hannah looked up at her. "I live here too, but I've never seen you here before," Hannah laughed. "We just rented an apartment in this building yesterday. Tom and I are going to live here now," she told her. "Wow, you're welcome to visit," smiled Selena, and thought that nothing would be a problem for their meetings with Alexander now, because she could go to Leslie's, and her mom would know it. In the evening, when they met, she told him everything. "So I know Leslie and Tom too," he told her. "So let's go visit them together then," Selena suggested, and they immediately went back to the entryway, up to the floor. Hannah was glad to have guests. Now every night they gathered there, it was fun. They didn't have to go anywhere. The whole group was here. But when her mother found out about hanging out with Leslie, she didn't approve. "Where's Alexander?" Selena came to see Leslie. "I don't know. He hasn't come yet," she said. Selena was offended because he goes somewhere without her. She did not even suspect that the guy could be doing some other personal things of his own. And the one at this time with his friend dipped at the disco girls from the pedagogical school. Naturally, Selena couldn't know about it, and probably Hannah didn't even know about it. And when with Alexander they began to meet after a day after two, then the girl realized that he was still going somewhere. Even though Hannah supported her in everything, it still didn't help. Rightly said then Alexander that it was her maximalist love at 15. When winter was almost over, they sat at Leslie's as before. Alexander came in. "Hello everyone." He walked into the room, saw Selena, smiled, immediately went to her, took her hands. "Where have you been again?" she asked him, although she realized that he had never offered anything, neither to meet nor to be friends, never confessed his feelings, but she still considered him hers. "Where I was, there is no longer," he laughed, stood up, picked up the girl, began to kiss her. "Alexander, You look kind of cheerful today, Selena said. Yes, he kissed her once more. Did something happen? She saw that this joy was all fake. Selena, I'm sorry, he kissed and kissed her. What for? Tell me already? She pushed him away from her. It was the first time she had ever done that. I'm getting married. I have a wedding in 2 weeks. He said those words and Selena felt like he slapped her. I don't get it. How are you getting married? She stood there in a complete stupor. That's when Hannah walked into the room. I did mishear, she asked. No, guys, I don't know how it happened, but Amy's pregnant. I can't leave her now. He didn't look Selena in the eye. Get off. She took his hands off her, then ran out of the apartment and went to her apartment. What's wrong with you? Saw her mother, how she felt when she came home. Don't talk to me. No one. Went into her room and closed Celine. The tears flowed by themselves. There was such pain in her soul. She didn't know what to do, what to say, how to act. How could he do this to her? Because she had given herself to him completely, dissolved into him, and he just did not understand. Selena didn't go out all week. She didn't even go down to Leslie's to avoid meeting anyone. After the weekend, the neighbor came to see her on her own. Come on, we need to talk. She called her over to her place. The girl left the apartment, quietly went down to Leslie's place. They were sitting in the kitchen. Will you go? Asked Hannah to her. Where to? The neighbor didn't even smile. To the wedding. Where else? Hannah knew it hurt Selena to hear that, but she could not ask because Alexander had asked her to. And what am I going to be there as, a bridesmaid? Selena grinned sadly. Well, enough already. He's an adult. You're still a schoolgirl. How many you will have like him all? Do not be sad. Let him go. Let him get married and everything will be fine with him. And you too, persuaded her friend. And you know, I'll go, said Selena, because she had nothing to lose. And she would see this bride, who he had traded her for. The girl was not stupid. She really realized that at that age, she could not offer Alexander anything, and he apparently could not wait. That day, when there was a wedding, she tried strong alcohol for the first time, and then she danced, and then with her sister she went out for a walk somewhere. That day was like a blur. It was painful to watch a happy neighbor kissing some other girl. It was a year away from graduation. Alexander and Amy had gone somewhere. They just weren't in the apartment. At first, Selena felt bad. She was bored. She didn't go anywhere. She stopped talking to Leslie. Then Hannah and Tom moved out. The girl finished her studies, got her diploma, and went to another city to enroll. It had been a long time since Alexander had told her he had someone else. By the time she studied at the institute, the pain had somehow dulled. Everything was forgotten. Or maybe she had grown older and looked at many things differently. No one could explain that. Selena, are you always so sad? Asked her roommate in the dormitory. No, I'm normal, she answered. Yes, I see how normal you are. You spend all day in the room. It would be better to study, read something, notes rewrite, but that's just sitting there, doing nothing, said to her Betty. Why do nothing, I think, answered Selena. Ha ha, ha. That's an argument. That's the first time I've ever heard that. Her friend laughed at her. I don't see anything funny, turned away from her neighbor. Come on, stop being sad and thinking. Let's go for a walk, she called her. Oh, you know, I'm so reluctant, Selena honestly admitted. Tell me, when was the last time you went out with guys, dated, went to a disco or something else? Sat down next to her Betty. When, never. At that moment, she remembered how with Alexander they went out, how he played guitar to her, sang songs. Well, Betty was waiting for her to act. And you know what? Okay, let's go, Selena agreed with her. That's another thing. Come on, get up. I'll show you that you can not only think, but also have a good time, immediately revived girlfriend. They went outside, went to the center of the city. It was very beautiful. There were benches. You could sit and meet with friends. Here they are. Now I'll introduce you, said Betty to Celine. A group of young people approached them, where there were both girls and guys. After introductions, they started talking to Selena as if they had known her forever. And among all of them, the girls singled one out. His name was Michael. He wasn't like the others. If everyone else wanted to drink, go for a walk, go to a disco or something else, this one was kind of pensive. He was always looking somewhere, not sitting with everyone else. But today Selena was too shy to approach him. because she didn't know what to talk about and what to do. They returned home with the neighbor. She began to ask how and what, liked, did not like. You know, who is this Michael? Selena did not want to put this conversation in a long box. Wow, girlfriend, the first time she went out on the street, met the company, and immediately began to build bridges, Betty told her. Come on, I was just finding out. The girl was immediately embarrassed. Come on, say everything straight. I understand, smiled roommate. What can I say? I just liked the guy and wanted to know something about him, shrugged Selena. Well, you know, I can't even tell you anything about him. He's always so quiet, though he gathers with us all the time, but he doesn't say much when he's talking. If everyone is dancing, he sits aside. They tell jokes, he laughs, but he never speaks. Began to remember Betty about Michael. I see. Selena stopped talking. Why don't you ask him yourself? Said her friend confidently. Maybe someday I'll get my act together and ask, felt the girl's cheeks flush. The next day, when they came in from their studies, they immediately started packing. Now it was only worth it to look at her roommate as she smiled and nodded at her, showing that she was ready to go again today. So are you going to talk to him today? Betty was curious. I don't know. I guess Selena wasn't a timid person, but after what happened to her in her relationship with Alexander, she had changed a bit. Today, all the guys were at the cafe when everyone was sitting around laughing about something. That's when Selena came up to Michael. Why aren't you laughing with everyone else? She asked. How about you? He turned to her. I don't know. She was confused by the question. She was expecting something else. Well, I'm kind of new in this company. I don't know much yet, she said. Well, I'm more of a listener than a talker. I'm interested in these guys, interested in watching what they do, how they do it, but I don't really want to take part in it, Michael told her and looked at her with his clear blue eyes. Selena could see that he was waiting for an answer or some other word from her, but she didn't know what to say, what to talk about. She couldn't think of anything to ask either. How about we get out of here? Michael suggested himself. Where should we go? The girl asked him. Yes, anywhere, he told her. You know, of course, I'm new to this city, but I know a place here. I discovered it recently. Come on, I'll show you, she smiled at him. Now Selena felt inside that something was changing in her. She really liked this guy. In all the time she had spent without Alexander, she had never looked at other young men. Let's go, he stood up. BT, we'll go for a walk with Michael. I hope no one will mind. She turned to her girlfriend, but looked at all the guys. Yeah, sure, come on. Her roommate winked at her and smiled. They left the cafe and headed in the direction where the private sector was. I even wonder where you're taking me, Michael said after a long silence. It is certainly not close, but believe me, it is very beautiful there. She said so because she could not explain where she was taking the young man. They had practically reached the exit from the city. There was a big bridge there. Selena asked him to help her, and she started to go down. Michael gave her a hand, helped her, and then went down himself. Now they were under the bridge. There was a ledge to sit on, and as they did so, Selena took the boy by the chin and turned his head to the side. Look, she said. There was a river with a swift current, with large rocks piled along the edges, and a young forest framing the river. Yes, you're right. It's really beautiful here, he told her. Brr, she shivered. Are you cold? He turned to her. Yes, I didn't think it would be chilly here, but apparently from the river, she wrapped her arms around herself. Come here, he moved closer. Celine didn't resist. The young man put his arms around her and pulled his jacket over her back. Thank you, she lifted her head and looked up at him. You smell so good, Michael suddenly told her. What? She laughed. It's true, he answered her. You're really different. No one has ever said such a compliment to me before, she giggled. From there they sat in silence, watching the water flow. When a few hours had passed, the girl stood up. Hello, he came up and said to her. Hello, everything inside her shook again. Her hands trembled, just like her voice. The girl could not pull herself together. How are you? Alexander asked her. You and I haven't seen each other for so many years, and besides the banal how are you, you didn't know what to ask me. She finally managed to answer. Selena, I'm sorry. He looked at her and she could see that his feeling hadn't gone anywhere either. No way. She stepped around him and wanted to walk away, but he wouldn't let her. Wait, let's go somewhere and talk, he suggested to her. Alexander, please don't start. She really didn't want this. No, she really wanted it, but that would mean betraying her, Michael. We'll go. Everything will be fine. I promise you. He pulled her with him. The girl closed her eyes. She knew she was doing the wrong thing, but she couldn't help it. They walked to a small cafe. Alexander was saying something. She was smiling. Selena just sat and looked at the man she cared so much about. Why aren't you saying anything? He asked her. I don't know what to say to you. I realize that you deceived me, betrayed me, but I can't help it. I just want to be near you. Now she wasn't as embarrassed as before. Okay, come here. He held out his hand to her. Selena stood up, walking over to him. He sat her on his lap and started kissing her neck, her hair. She closed her eyes and just gave into those feelings. Why does it have to be like this every time? She spoke softly. Shall we go to my place? He whispered to her. Do you live there too? She asked him. Yep, he said back to her. What about your wife? This question was not just because she was worried that Amy might see them, but in general, whether she was there now or not. We divorced. He looked into the girl's eyes. Good, she didn't bother asking him why, about what, because she realized that if he wanted to, he would tell her. Now, when they came to the entrance where they both lived, Selena smiled. She took off her shoes, as in childhood, and quietly began to climb the stairs. Alexander carried her bag, followed, and smiled. They entered the apartment, whispered for a long time, then started kissing. When Selena woke up in his bed in the morning, she had no regrets. Are you going to stay? Alexander asked her. No, actually, I didn't want to tell you about it yesterday. I'm getting married. She said those words and smiled. I don't see anything funny, he told her. I just remembered how you once said those words to me just like that, she kissed him. And the fact that you are now cheating on your fiancé, is that normal? Alexander asked her. Yes, I realize that I am doing wrong, but I couldn't stop myself, she said, got up and started to dress. Will I see you again? He sat up in bed. I can't answer that question for you, she told him, took her bag and shoes in her hands, quietly left the apartment, went down to the floor. There she put on her heels and started to climb back up. Selena knocked on the door. Her mother opened it immediately. Hi, cheered both of them as Selena hugged the woman. The mother only hummed and looked at her. What? Her daughter asked her. Nothing, hands are warm. After that they talked a lot and for a long time, and closer to the weekend together went to where Michael and Selena lived. Everything went well. The girl did not even remember about her cheating. Yes, and it was hard to call it cheating. In fact, it was, but not to her liking. She loved this man and wanted to always be with him. And maybe now that her dream had come true, she would forget him forever. But that's just what she thought to herself. 3 years passed. Things were going very well in her and Michael's relationship. Her husband was already working. Now Selena was getting a job too. When she had worked almost a year, she was entitled to a vacation. Then Oma, I'm going. She looked at her husband. Yes, of course. Where do you want to go? He was interested. First of all, I'll visit my mom, and then we'll see. She almost never hid anything from him. Great. It was warm between them now, as it always was. And so Selena was walking up her entryway again. She glanced at Alexander's door, stepping through her own. Her parents were happy to see her arrive. And when the next day she wanted to meet her friends, she went out into the yard, and again she saw him. And again she couldn't pass by. She stopped. Today, no one asked how and who was doing. They just hugged and started kissing. So funny, said the girl, when they were already at Alexander's apartment. What's so funny? He didn't understand. I did not know. We meet once every 5 years, she exaggerated. My beautiful. He removed the bangs from her eyes. Alexander, don't please, she asked him, knowing that again she would do nothing to make them break up and never meet again. How are you here now? I came on vacation, decided first to see my mother, and then already rushed somewhere further. She was pleased to lie next to him. And let's go together, suggested to her Alexander. I don't mind, she turned to him and kissed him. Mom, as usual, didn't know anything. Selena told her she was going alone. She took her suitcase and went to the train station. Alexander was already waiting for her there. They spent the whole vacation together. They both came back, realizing that she was about to go home. "Can't you stay?" he asked her. No, she didn't lie to him because she didn't want to hurt Michael. On the last night, Alexander had kissed her so much that Selena was ready to change her mind, but she mustered up all her willpower and left. She arrived home and Michael greeted her with flowers. He always did that because he was a very attentive and caring husband. She was a little embarrassed in front of him, but she smiled. Life went on. Almost a year passed, and when Selena was once again going on vacation, she decided that if she met Alexander, she would definitely tell everything to Michael, and they would divorce. And so, when the bags were already packed and she was ready to go out, she suddenly felt sick. "What's wrong?" Michael came running up to her. "I don't know, maybe my blood pressure dropped, and I was dizzy and nauseous. Don't you think?" Michael stopped talking and smiled. "You mean the pregnancy?" Selena guessed. Yeah, he nodded affirmatively. But it was easy to check. They'd been waiting for this moment for a long time, and now, when she was about to leave, it had come. When it was confirmed, of course, she decided to stay with her husband, called her mom, told her the good news. After that, it was a hard time. All year long, she was nauseous, her blood pressure was high, her legs were swollen. Selena just couldn't wait until it was time to burst into tears. And then it happened. Their firstborn son was born and they named him Mark. Selena had always felt like a young girl who could do anything, but when the baby came into the world, the time somehow quickly ran away. Here she was sitting with him in the maternity leave, and now it's time for him to go to kindergarten. Now there were already other worries, some crafts, applications, everything else. Michael had been around all this time, but they were like neighbors. "Michael, should we split up like you did?" Selena asked him in the kitchen. "I don't know. If you want to, let's get a divorce." He was apathetic as always. "Why are you like this?" She sat down on the chair next to him. "Like what?" He didn't look at her. "Oh, okay." She got up, went to her room. So life went on, and when Mark was in 4th grade, Selena, after all, made up her mind and filed for divorce. The apartment was Michael's parents', so there was nothing to divide. She packed some things, and together with her son, they went to Selena's hometown. "Do not regret that so many years have passed," her mother asked her. "What's there to regret? I'm like in a cage. Here is a child with whom I need to constantly study, something to do on the other hand. Pharmacy husband, who always does not care what I say. He will do." Selena was nervous. "Don't be so hard on yourself," her mother told her. "Say, Mom, are any of the girls left in town?" she asked her. "You know, I think Hannah's here." The woman remembered something. "Do you think they still have a home phone or not anymore?" smiled Selena. "You dial it? Check. She's been living with her grandmother lately. Maybe she still has one." Her mother shrugged. Selena dialed her school friend's home number, and after a couple of beeps, she heard her. "Hannah, hi," she said cheerfully. "Selena, it can't be how many years it's been." Couldn't believe it. They arranged to meet, and that evening they spent a lot of fun. Almost all night, Selena told Hannah what they had had over the years. They saw that they had changed a lot. They both had children, a divorce under their belt. "Well, you go ahead, don't get lost," Hannah told her. "Yeah, now, I guess I won't get lost, as long as I've come here to live here," Celine told her. The time was practically 5 in the morning when she went outside and walked home. And when she walked into the courtyard, she just laughed. There at the table sat none other than Alexander. "This just can't be." She walked towards him. "Selena, how are you here at this hour?" He looked up at her. "I left my husband, I came to my mother, and you?" Now she was no longer shy, sat down next to him and took his hand. "I'm sick of everything at home. I went out for some fresh air." He sighed and smiled, but it turned out to be sad. At 5 in the morning, she shook her head. "Aha, you left for me? I had nothing left. Met with one, a little lived together, then decided to get married. And now I still regret that I went to this step," said calmly Alexander. "I see, and I wanted to live with my mother. But now I realize that I'll probably rent an apartment," Selena said slowly. They exchanged phone numbers, hugged, entered the entrance together, went upstairs. "Bye," he looked into her eyes. "Bye." She walked into the house. Inside her, It was like butterflies were fluttering. "What's the matter with you? Did you meet the neighbor again? Saw her mother? What a state she was in." "That's it, Mom, enough. It's been so long. It's boring." She went into her room where her son was sleeping, lay down next to him. The next day, as she wanted, Selena really rented an apartment and in the evening called Alexandra. "If you want to come, I'll give you the address now," she told him. "I'm on my way," he answered and hung up. Selena told her mom that she wouldn't take the baby with her because she wanted to do some repairs. She herself just wanted to meet Alexander. He arrived. They briefly sat at the table, drank a little wine, and then they were together again in bed. He hugged her, kissed her, stroked her hair. She touched his stubble, remembering how good they had been together. "Funny," she said. "Funny to you again. What is it this time?" Alexander asked her. "How many years you and I have been together? A lot, but really not at all," she replied. "No, it's only physically we are not together, but for real?" He looked expectantly. "Well, 15 years for sure," she counted in her head. Selena raised up on her elbow. "Can you imagine? So many years we love each other, and there's no way we can be together." Alexander lay on his back and sighed. "Maybe it's not fate." Selena kissed him. "I don't know the answer to that question." He squeezed his eyes shut, sighed, hugged her, realizing that in the morning he would still have to go back to his wife. "We can't be together now either, can we?" She looked at him. "You see, Selena, yes, my wife is giving me a hard time, but I can't hurt her, at least not yet. I need time," he told her. Okay, I don't demand anything from you," she smiled. Now that Mark was being sent to his grandmother's house for the weekend, Selena and Alexander were seeing each other again, and there were already conscious meetings between two adults. "What have you been doing for a week?" Alexander asked her. "Nothing, back and forth, getting a job," she said quickly. "Did not meet anyone?" Asked another question. "Why are you talking like that?" Selena didn't understand. "You know how jealous I am of you." He kissed her without stopping. Himself, then with his wife, does not want to offend her, but I am jealous, and I do not am, and others will not give. Did not understand his girlfriend. All right, calm down," he pulled her to him. When Selena got a job, perhaps it was Alexander's fault, who was always talking about it, or maybe she wanted it herself, but that's where she met Paul. He worked as a security guard, and he was such a simple guy. You could talk to him about anything, and her mom liked him. Mark began to treat him normally. "Alexander, I'm getting married," Selena told him once when we met. "I don't get it." He looked at her, realizing that she had never once told him about any other men or meeting them. "I'm sorry, but if you want, we can keep seeing each other," she said. Alexander quickly got up, got dressed and left without saying a word. Selena realized that she had hurt him, but it wasn't good to live alone either. After the wedding, Paul suggested that Selena go to the north to try to make some money there. She didn't mind because she needed the distraction. Her mom talked her into leaving Mark here, not picking him up from school. That was the deal. Leaving Mark here, not picking him up from school. That was the deal. Strange as it may seem, the young couple settled down quickly after arriving in the north. They found a job, got good money, and somehow Paul began to drift away from his wife. Here he drank once, here is the second, came home drunk, began to complain about how hard his life. When Selena said the same thing, he only nodded his head, not believing her. Family life lasted only 3 years. During that time, Selena only went home once on vacation to see her son. The rest of the time, they'd only talk on the phone. And now she was standing on the doorstep with a bag, looking at Paul, and could not believe that from a handsome, cheerful, cool guy he had turned into a sullen man who was always dissatisfied with something. When she came back to her hometown, she applied to the bank, took a mortgage. The money for the first installment was enough. Now she had her own apartment where she and Mark moved. Everything was good. Selena began to make repairs. Her mother often came to visit them. Then they came to her, and the repairs were progressing. Now as Selena wanted to go on vacation, which happened twice in a year, she took her mother there, and strangely enough, they were very good together. "And why did your life turn out this way?" the woman asked her. "Mom, do not start. did not want to talk about her daughter. I'm not starting. Everything is still ahead of you. You're only. She didn't have time to finish. Selena interrupted her. Let's not talk about age right now, she asked her. Okay, the woman agreed. Life went on as usual. And then the mother got a trip to a sanatorium for two. She went to Selena. Oh, no, 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 no. I'm not going with you. She immediately waved her hands. I see, the woman knew there would be nothing for her to do at the sanatorium. Then I'll take Mark with me. That's fine. Go, you rest there, and I'll rest from you, laughed Selena. Grandmother and grandson packed their bags. They left. Selena had only been home alone for 2 days. She just enjoyed this loneliness because there was someone in her life all the time. And so she decided to go to the store, where the very fateful meeting took place. When Alexander said hello to her, Selena went about her usual business. She went to work, met with friends. On her day off, she decided to go to her mother's apartment to help her with the kitchen renovations while she was away. Hi, she passed by her father's room and immediately began to prepare the room for wallpapering. Are you going to be here alone? The man didn't understand. Why not, she wondered. Okay, the father waved his hand. He was not in the life of this family at all. When everything was finished, Selena went home. It was a day off, 7 o'clock in the evening. She thought it would be good to meet Hannah. The girl took her phone out of her pocket, went into the entryway, but she didn't have time to dial the number. Alexander was sitting on the windowsill in the entryway. What are you doing here? Selena was surprised. I'm waiting for you. He was not embarrassed at all. Ah, she stretched out, passed by, came up, opened the door, and waited for him to come in, so as not to find out all this on the stairwell. Are you offended? He crossed the threshold. No, she replied wryly. I see. Alexander realized that he was guilty before Selena. Will you have tea? The hostess realized that today she would not be able to go anywhere. Yes, he sat down on a chair and looked at her. Well, tell me, why did you come? She turned her back to the stove, doing something there so as not to see Alexander. I couldn't. He didn't explain anything. I see. If now I cannot. She could not help but take offense at him. Honey, I had so much work to do. He approached her, and now he had no doubt that she would not resist. Alexander, she pressed her back to him. I took a few days off. He spoke directly into her ear. So, Selena turned to him. Spend that time together. He turned off the stove and pulled her into the room. Wait, she couldn't keep up with him. And again, the gentle embrace, the hot kisses, everything the girl liked so much. She lay on his arm and thought of different things. What do you think? He was lying on his back. Why do you think I'm thinking about something right now? She smiled at such a tautology. Silence means you're thinking. A man can't do otherwise. He turned a little towards her. What can I think about? Only you. She smiled and kissed his shoulder. And what is there in your thoughts? Alexandra wondered. Nothing. I think that I should have waited so many years to lie with you like this now. She turned on her stomach. Selena, I love you so much. He stroked her. I love you. She was having a ball. They lay there, cuddling. They didn't want to get up at all. They fell asleep. In the morning, the girl woke up first. She wanted to surprise her guest with something. She went to the kitchen, started the dough for pancakes, and began cooking. At the same time, she had a kettle boiling. Selena made fragrant coffee, rolled the pancakes beautifully, arranged everything on a plate. She took a small creamer, filled it with jam, which her mother brewed. Wake up, darling. She brought everything to his bed. Good morning. He opened his eyes. Look what I made for you. She put a plate on the nightstand. What a delicious smell. Alexander stretched. He started to eat his breakfast, at the same moment giving a bite to Selena as well. They were acting like teenagers, though it wasn't like that at all. What are we going to do today? She asked and smiled. Probably for the first time in her life, she was so happy around a man. I don't know, suggested. He looked at her with loving eyes. Let's go to the park where we used to walk, she suggested and asked at the same time. I don't even know. He was somehow embarrassed. Why? She pouted her lips, pretending to be offended. And let's order something and lie around all day. He said his version of leisure time. I have great movies. She wanted to watch them for a long time, but somehow she didn't have time. See, you wanted to go to the park. He hugged her again. They couldn't get enough of each other. They couldn't let each other out of their embrace. So they lay like Alexander suggested. They didn't even make the bed. That's it, enough chilling. Selena said the next morning she had to go to work. Do you mind if I stay here? He asked her. Of course not, she was going to. I'll be there soon. She kissed her lover and left. Everyone who saw the girl now realized that she had something wrong, because she only did not glow with happiness. Are you in love, friend? A co-worker came up to her. You know, I don't want to tell anything yet, somehow later. So as not to jinx it, Selena was afraid that Alexander could leave again and never come back. Okay, I see that you're doing well. I will not interfere, withdrew from her. Somehow the girl finished the day. Home did not go and flew. Now Selena did not care who would think about her, how she behaved. The girl went to the store, bought everything for dinner, went to the house, and another fabulous evening took place. I feel so good with you. The man pressed her against him. Even though Selena realized that she had accepted him once again, and he might think it would always be like this. If he did something or made a mess of things, she would still forgive him and take him back. But she couldn't help it. So many years without a normal relationship had taken its toll. Would you give birth to me? Suddenly asked Alexander. Do not understand? She stopped the course of her thoughts because they were interrupted by his strange question. And what is not clear, he turned to her. What gave birth? I'm not at that age anymore, she giggled. You see, after my daughter died, I want children so much, but I cannot get, Alexander admitted. Of course, I understand everything, but the girl stopped talking. On the one hand, she wanted to please her lover, and on the other hand, she did not know if she needed another child. Okay, let's go. He leaned back on the pillow. I need to think. Selena found something to say. Okay. They turned on the next episode of the movie and began to watch, each thinking about his own. Alexander's weekend ended quickly, and he had to go to work again. And as Selena worked in an ordinary organization, went there in the morning and came in the evening, then Alexander worked for himself, and his working day was not rationed. When should I expect you? She asked. I don't know. I hope to be back by evening, he told her, kissed her and left. Okay, bye. She was afraid to let him go. But love did not deceive. Now every day, even if not at 5, but by evening still returned. I've made dinner. A happy Selena greeted him. Great. I'm hungry as a wolf, he said and went to wash his hands. During the time that Mom and Mark were in the sanatorium here, Selena has practically formed a family. I've made up my mind, Selena told Alexander one evening. To do what? He turned to her. To get pregnant. She looked at him and smiled again. Thank you. He kissed her. You what? It still needs to be done. She had so many unspent feelings that Selena was ready to do anything for this man. Yes, I think there will be a problem with that. You'll have to go to the clinic, Alexander told her. What? Why? She didn't understand. It so happens that I have problems, so it is necessary to do everything artificially. He looked her trustingly in the eyes. It's very expensive. Selena knew how much IVF costs. I have a classmate who works there. He will help me do everything, the man assured her. Okay, Selena snickered. She didn't think it would turn out like this. Now we have to go there, go through all the procedures, and then talk about the main thing. He kissed her. After that, Alexander wasn't home for a couple days. He called saying he had work, so he was delayed. Selena had nothing against it. She thought that since they were already talking about such serious topics, he would not deceive her. Hi, sorry it's been so long, he came to her. It's okay, she was thinking about the trip to the clinic. Will you be able to take a vacation at work? Alexander asked her. Yes, of course, she doubted, but there was nothing to worry about yet. That's great. I'll then also tell the employees that I'll be gone for a while. He seemed happy. When everything was decided, they packed up and drove to the neighboring town where the clinic they needed was located. Isn't it dangerous? Selena asked Alexander. I do not know. The doctor will tell everything. He smiled. Let's agree on something with you. She didn't look at him. Okay, about what? Talk. He was ready for all conditions. If at the first time will not work, then we will not try again. She said all this somehow sad. Whatever you say, love. He kissed the top of her head. When they were at the hospital, Selena was taken somewhere, going through all the procedures she was told. "Hi, Jacob." Alexander met his friend in the hallway. "Hello." They went to his office. "Is everything ready?" The man looked at him. "Yes." The man shook his head. "Well, why are you reacting like that?" Clapped his comrade on his shoulder. "Do you realize what I'm doing?" Raised the doctor's eyes at him. "Come on, she's young. Everything will be fine," Alexander said cheerfully. "That's it. We're waiting for your Selena," said the man, and started studying her papers. It was done. Alexander was staying with Jacob while Selena was at the clinic. She was perfectly healthy. They could proceed with the surgery. Together with Alexander, they signed all the paperwork. It seemed all they had to do now was wait. "Alexander, are you sure?" his friend asked him. Of course, there was not a single thought in his mind that he doubted anything. "Just a few more days then, and everything will be ready," Jacob told him. "That's fine." He went to the hospital to support Selena. When everything was done, they drove home together. The girl had gotten all the recommendations from the doctors, so now all they had to do was follow everything. "Come on, let's not say anything to anyone yet," Alexander told her quietly and hugged her. Good. She was also afraid that something might not work out. "I'll have to leave for work now." The man looked at his companion. "Good, well, I'll go to my mom's. They've been here for a while," said resting. Selena didn't understand how she felt right now. "That's fine. See you later." He kissed her, walked her to her mother's house, and then went about his business. Selena walked up the steps. There were so many thoughts in her head that she thought she would go crazy if she thought about it all. In the end, the girl decided not to tell her mom anything for now. How it was going to be would be the way it would be. "Hi." She entered the apartment, first hugging her son and then already her mom. "Where have you been so long?" Looked at her woman. "I became ill. I decided to take a long vacation and went to the clinic, a little to tidy up my health." "And what are you in pain?" The woman got worried. "Nothing in particular, but it wouldn't hurt to get better." Selena lied flat out. "Don't upset me like that." Her mother hugged her again. They sat and talked. Mark told how he and his grandmother had spent time in the sanatorium. And Selena had one thing on her mind, that now she was expecting a child from Alexander. "Daughter, I can see that something is bothering you." When Mark went into the room, the mother decided to talk to the girl. "Mom, I can't tell you anything yet because I don't know anything myself." Selena looked her in the eyes, so she believed her. And it wasn't untrue. The girl really wasn't sure about Alexander, about his attitude towards her, because he had betrayed her so many times. "Okay, I won't pester you. When you think it's necessary, you'll tell me," kissed her daughter on the cheek. "Thank you." Selena went home because she hoped that Alexander would come to her. And he came, which couldn't help but make her happy. "What's with the mood?" he asked from the threshold. "I don't know, probably hormones." She came over and pressed herself against him. "It's going to be okay," he hugged her. And now Selena felt as if he would never leave her side because of the pregnancy. I know. They stood like that in the hallway. The next day he went to work. Selena has to work too, but the condition was such that she just couldn't do anything. "Hello," she called her boss. "I'll stay home today. I feel really bad." She understood that she had just finished her vacation, but she couldn't do anything in that condition either. She stayed home. She stayed in bed practically the whole day. At some point, she had to call the doctor to ask why things were like this and what to do. "Selena, is everything all right?" Alexander called her back immediately. "Yes, how did you know?" She was surprised. "You forgot that Jacob is my friend. He was on his way to see her." "Right," she remembered. "I'll be there in a minute." He stopped talking to her. "Okay," the girl said simply already. Alexander arrived. He was so caring, doing everything for his girl. She immediately felt better as she snuggled up to him, fell asleep. From then on, Alexander was home or just around her as often and as long as possible. It was pleasing. One evening they were sitting at home. Selena was stirring sugar in a mug. "Alexander, are we going to live like this?" She asked him without raising her eyes. "Don't you get it?" He got nervous. "What is not clear here? I want to be your wife." She did not hide anything. "Let's wait until the baby is born, and then we will celebrate." He took her hand, pulled her and pressed her to him. "Okay," she always agreed with him. When a few months passed, Mark noticed that his mother had gotten better. Now it was impossible to hide from anyone that she was expecting a child. "Honey, when did you want to tell me about this?" Her mom came to visit her. Selena became nervous that at any moment Alexander could come, and she did not want her and her mom to meet. "And let's go to your place, we'll talk, or just take a walk." The girl began to dress. Good was not against the mother. They went outside, walked, talked, but Selena never said anything to her mother. "Yes, I'm expecting a baby, but I haven't said anything to anyone yet," the daughter told cryptically. "Well, I don't recognize you lately." She wanted to hug Selena, but she pulled away a little. "What are you doing?" Her mom didn't understand. "I've been sick of the smell of perfume lately," she smiled. "Are you coming home or to our place?" Her mother asked because Mark was at her place. "I'm going home," turned around and walked Selena. "Okay, bye," the woman said in her back, realizing that not everything is easy in her daughter's life. Alexander could show up today and then be gone for 2 days. Some moments Selena just wondered why she had agreed to all of this. She would be alone now. How good it is when you don't think about anything, don't suffer about anyone. But no, she had to meet him again. Pregnancy had taken its toll. All Selena did now was cry and wait. "Where have you been?" She met Alexander once again with a red-eyed girl. "My darling," he began his song. "You know how I'm alone here. I can't tell my mom yet." She was crying again. "That's it. Calm down," he told her. They spent many days together, but except for compliments and hugs, Alexander gave nothing to the girl. "Here, everything necessary." He brought her from the pharmacy medicines. "Thank you, but I need you." "Not all this," she showed her purchases. "Understand, I work. We need something to live on." He kissed and hugged her again. Toward nightfall, he left again. What the hell is this? Could not get out of her depression, girl. The next day, she called a friend with whom she worked together. "Hi, can you come over?" she asked her. "Yeah, what's wrong?" She got curious. "Come, I'll tell you everything." Selena finally decided. Her friend was at her place in the evening. They sat in the room. The girl was shocked to see Selena's belly. "So you'll be on maternity leave soon," she said. "Yeah, no one at work knows yet. I'm hiding it as best I can," she said. "Yes, friend, and I thought you were on a roll," smiled the colleague. I do not know why I went to all this," cried Selena, and then told her friend what and how she had happened. "What's wrong with you?" She couldn't believe her ears. "Here, imagine what women are stupid." Selena continued to cry. "And who is this Alexander of yours?" she asked. "Here," the girl showed her a photo in her phone. "You what? I know him," made Big Eye's friend. "Well, a lot of people know him." Selena calmed down a bit. "And I know his wife," the girl said. "I don't get it." "What wife? He's not married." It was Selena's turn to be surprised. "How come?" "She works in a kindergarten," said the colleague. "No way," cried the girl even more. At that moment, the doors opened. Alexander appeared in the apartment. "Hi, Alexander," stood up the guest to leave the apartment. By doing so, she let him know that she knew him. "Hello." He turned pale, walked into the room. "Stop crying. You could hurt the baby," he told Selena. "Why did you do all this?" She didn't understand. "I love you." He wanted to approach her. "Until you get divorced, don't even think about it." She put her hands out in front of her. "What are you listening to her? It's not enough what gossip is going around the city." Alexander tried to justify himself. "What do you want to tell me that she just deceived me? Why should she?" Cried, and could not understand how Alexander could do that to her. She thought that since they had been together since childhood, he loved her with a sincere love. How many times he had asked her to forgive him, and how could she believe it all? And why would she have a baby now if he wasn't around? How to tell her mother about all this? Many thoughts were in the girl's mind. "Selena," he approached her. "No, I told you. Until you go see your wife, you can't even come near my house," she told him. "What am I supposed to tell her?" Alexander started talking to her differently. "How is that what?" "Tell her the whole truth, that you have a woman, that she is expecting a child from you, and most importantly, divorce." Through sobs she spoke. "Selena." He looked at her and didn't say anything else. "What?" She wasn't ready to back down anywhere right now. "Okay, come on by. I'll be right there." He walked out the apartment door. Selena stood in the hallway, only hearing the door of the entryway slam. She dialed her mom's number. "Yes, daughter. Why are you so late?" She was surprised. "Mom, I need to talk to you." Finally got up the courage to tell her mother. "Okay, come." She got excited because it was not often that her daughter shared with her. When Selena came and told all this to her mother, she found nothing better than to advise her to get acquainted with Alexander's wife herself. "And what? How do you imagine it? I just come to her. So what?" Selena was curious and incomprehensible. It had never happened in her life. "Well, how is that what? First of all, your stomach goes to your forehead. And secondly, you have been in love and know each other for so long." The mother was in shock at what her daughter is doing. Although not a little girl, there is a head on her shoulders. Why, maybe listen to you and really go? At this point, Selena even smiled because she imagined the eyes of a woman who just like her trusted Alexander. Go and talk. And suddenly he really is nothing, this man, and you cry because of him. You'll have a baby. We'll raise it. We'll grow up. You're not as old as you say. Mom came over and hugged Selena. "Thank you for your support," she told her. She hadn't slept half the night tonight because she was thinking about how and what she would say to the one her loved one was living with. At the same moment, she grinned. No matter how many wrongs he had brought her, she still thought about him, even in her head, that he was her favorite. But that wasn't important right now. It was different. The next day, from the very morning, Selena did not put off an alarm box, got dressed and went exactly to the kindergarten where Alice's wife Alexander worked. Naturally, neither to him nor to anyone else she said anything. "Hello." Selena entered the kindergarten. When asked who she wanted, she said, "But we can't call her now. The workday has already started. She's with the children." Some woman spoke to her. "Okay, I'll go to the group then." Celine had nothing to lose. The one she was talking to now rushed after her. At the noise, other teachers ran out. Also the music teacher, the speech therapist came too. And when Selena entered the group where Alice works, there were already quite a few adults there. "Hello, Alice," a pregnant girl said to her. She unbuttoned her coat on purpose so that her big belly could be seen better. "Hello, Selena," she replied, and her colleagues tensed up. "And what, you think he'll stay with you? We've been together for so long. I'm expecting a child from him. Soon it will be born." Selena began to tell her directly into her eyes. "My dear, you are such a fool," grinned Alice. At this moment, all the colleagues were shocked that the wife did not react in any way to the fact that her husband had a mistress. "Why did I become a fool?" The girl did not understand anything. She looked at those present with confusion. "Don't you know whose child it is?" Alice asked a strange question. "Of course I know mine," answered her interlocutor. Everyone else stood there silent and just shocked at what they were hearing here now. "No, it's my child, mine and Alexandra's. We've been looking for a surrogate mother for a long time, but it's expensive, and no one agreed in our city. And then you came along. Alexander offered me a plan. I didn't refuse. The embryo was being prepared, so they planted it in you." Alice explained to her. "What are you talking about? I signed all the documents for IVF." Selena shouted loudly. "No, you signed the papers that you agreed to become a surrogate mother. Naturally, we'll pay you the money, but you have to give up the baby." Alice was as calm as a boa constrictor, which made everyone around her terrified. I won't give it to you. It's my baby." Selena screamed at her. They tried to calm her down, but she was already in such a state that she couldn't see anyone or anything. She ran down the stairs and out into the street. She needed to get home right away because anything could happen to her in this state. How could all this have happened? And in fact, if it was true, it could be called betrayal more than betrayal. "How could you do this to me?" She called Alexandra on the way. "Selena, tell me exactly what happened. He heard that she is in a very bad condition." "What's going on, and you're asking me that?" She shouted all over the street. Naturally, in such a condition, did not have to wait for anything good. Selena was put in the hospital. In the evening, she became ill. An ambulance was called. She was taken away. Alexander came as soon as he heard. "Come here." She looked at him like a wolf at his prey. "Beloved, believe me, I do not love her. I have always loved you. Everything she told you is not true. We did honestly," Alexander said and begged her. Man, you're only making things worse. She can't worry, it will be bad, the nurse told him. I will come tomorrow, and before that I will write. He sent the girl an air kiss. She lay on the bed, looking at the ceiling, and did not understand who then in life can be trusted. After this moment, it was not clear what to do at all. Selena decided to tell everything to her mom, even though she didn't want to at first. She dialed her number, and even though it was very late, the woman came. Wow, her mom listened to her. Can you imagine how this could have happened? Selena cried. And I told you years ago that he would ruin your life, cried the mother along with her daughter. Don't. Now Selena tried to calm her down. At that moment, there was a prickling at the bottom of her stomach. Ouch. Grabbed the girl for him. What? Did not understand the woman. I do not know, raised her eyes full of horror at her mother. Then she got up and ran into the corridor, called the doctor. Everyone immediately fussed, ran. The woman was put out into the corridor. Call Alexander. She heard her daughter ask her to do so. Alexander, hello, this is Selena's mom. She dialed his number from her phone. Did something happen? I was at her place a few hours ago. He asked tiredly. Yes, she's in labor. Nothing, the woman softened or hid. On my way, he said, and passed out. Things were not easy for Selena. She was screaming loudly. The mother was left in the corridor only to worry. Alexander promised but never arrived. It had been hours, but he still hadn't been there. The mother kept dialing his number again and again, but no one answered. Some more time passed. The girl came out of the room, looked at the woman. Are you the mother? She asked. Yes, she nodded and walked over. You have a girl, 3,952 centimeters. Congratulations, she said, smiling. The granddaughter's new grandmother sat down on the couch that stood there. Thank you, she cried. It's okay, you will soon be able to see mom and baby, the nurse reassured. For some reason, time dragged very slowly, but finally, they are all together in the ward. The baby is lying in a separate crib. How are you? Mom asked her daughter. Everything is fine, and why Alexander is not there? You did not call him. Selena asked first of all. Called, he said he was on his way, but he is still not, said all that was mother. Well, it's in his repertoire, smiled the corners of her lips girl. Why don't you call him yourself? Mom handed her the phone. Come on, she took the device, dialed the number. Hello, she heard a man's voice. Selena pressed hang up. She looked at her mom. What are you doing? She saw confusion or fear in her eyes. It's not Alexander, she said. Who is? No one answered me at all. The woman was surprised. At that moment, the phone rang again. On the screen was Alexander's number. I'm listening, Selena answered. You just called, she heard. Who is this man to you? A new question. He is the father of my child, Selena said calmly. She tried not to be nervous. Together with his wife, they were in an accident. They are being taken to the hospital now. She learned about what happened. What do I have to do? Selena got worried. I just informed you about it. You can take care of it yourself, she beeped. And what? Waited for her mother to know what Selena had learned, because her eyes were getting bigger and bigger during the conversation. And then she started to cry. Alexander is in the hospital, and together with his Alice, cried Selena even harder. At that moment, the baby cried. It needed to be fed. So the woman left the room again. She decided to go to where Alexander had been brought and talk to him. Since she decided, she started to do it. The woman called a cab, reached the hospital. What she learned there made her change her plans a bit. Hello, a husband and wife who had been in an accident were recently admitted here. The visitor spoke quickly. Yes, but I want to upset you. While the ambulance was on its way to the hospital, the woman passed away and the man is in a coma, the doctor told her. I see, thank you. She went home, didn't know whether to tell her daughter or not. She decided that when she was discharged, she would tell her. Every day, Grandma and Mark visited Selena. Everything was fine, so they were discharged within a week. Everyone was happy. I'm wondering why Alexander isn't in touch. What's up with them? I need to call, Selena told her mother. Selena, I have something to tell you. Lowered her mother's eyes and spoke out what she had learned that day at the hospital. Mammy, can you stay with Sophia? I need to go to him. She looked at him with a pleading look. But let's hurry up. The child will soon be hungry. She realized that it was useless to do anything. "Thank you, my dear," kissed her daughter and ran. She entered his room. He was lying with a broken leg, and something was with his hands. "Hello," she said quietly at him and smiled. "Hello." He looked only with his eyes. He couldn't even turn his head. "You've had a daughter? Congratulations." She leaned over and kissed him. "What did you name her?" Alexander had already been told what had happened to Alice, and he realized that this was really their child now. "Sophia," Celine said proudly. "Beautiful." He grinned as best he could. After that, the girl sat down on the edge of the bed next to him. "Will you be able to forgive me?" he asked for the 100th time in her life. "I think so, because you made me happy, and now you gave me a daughter," Selena cried. "I'm sorry." A tear rolled down her cheek. He looked at her. "I have to go now, but I'll come back tomorrow," she said and kissed him. She didn't know where she got so much love and kindness for this man. At home, she studied with the baby. Mark was also interested. He helped his mother to fill the bathtub with water to bathe Sophia. Afterwards, he rocked his little sister in his arms. "Mark, do you remember Alexander?" she asked him. "Of course, he came to visit you many times," nodded the boy. "Would you mind if he came to live with us?" Selena wasn't sure about that yet, but for some reason she thought that Alexander would do exactly that. "Of course not. If you will be happy with this man, then I'm all for it, especially since he is Sophia's father," hugged the boy to his mother. "You are the best son," she kissed him. Now they all went to bed, and in the morning the whole family went to the hospital. Alexander could already get up. On crutches, he waddled down the steps of the hospital. "Hello, Selena." Mark and Sophia were waiting for him in the street. "Hello." He shook Mark's hand and kissed his girls. After that, they sat on the bench for a while, talking, and then escorted the man back. "Now that time has passed, will you agree to be my wife?" Alexander asked. "Tell me, is it really true that everything was real with me?" she asked him. "Of course, Alice's eggs somehow didn't fit, but you have to ask the doctor," he answered her, and lowered his head, because he was ashamed. "You know, even if it was not so, I still would not give this child to anyone." She hugged Alexander, and the goosebumps ran down her body, so she loved him. "I know, my love." He pressed himself against her and realized that this was the only one who would never deceive and betray.